So if the entire team gets cleaved, it is the tank's fault, which is weird because that's never the case when it comes to me when I play with Jack. But Nagura, also to note about this dungeon, bursting skittish, not really a big deal. I can think of maybe 2 spots in the dungeon where bursting is dangerous, of course, with these minions of Zul, which are being skipped at the beginning anyway. So really just the next ones in the room, and skittish, complete non-factor.
Yeah, definitely. Skittish is not really a big deal, especially if you have 2 rogues and this Prot warrior who is so tanky, can just stay in and do a lot of damage, maintaining that aggro. Lacelle actually going down for 40k here, not managing to do the skip properly. So definitely already a big mistake really at the very start. Not only do you lose the 5 seconds, you also lose the buff food, and you need to take the time to get the rest back up. So Method and A already in the lead here from the very get-go. There's some other nerfs also that happen in the dungeon, considering the bosses, but we'll talk about it later once we reach them.
Yeah, I mean, that was unfortunate with Lacelle. That's 5 seconds on the clock already. You can see that Shadow Melt cooldown is running, so he just didn't manage to get it off as intended there. Both teams just doing a pretty substantial pull here. We are in a Tides-heavy dungeon as far as the beguiling affix goes right now, meaning there's going to be several emissaries of Tides present throughout the dungeon in much higher quantity than the other 2. Tides, again, just to remind those at home, since we're in that new affix, are the ones that prevent any form of interrupt or crowd control around their surrounding enemy mobs. So it could be quite dangerous for these Witch Doctors here. As you can see, they just free cast on the tank. You can line of sight the Shadow Bolt volley, but you have to be really careful when doing so.
Yeah, one more thing to note here is that both of those teams pulling a little bit slower than what we are used to in the spring season, but that's obviously because we have Fortified now. Well, throughout the whole spring season, we did have Tyrannical in King's Stress, making all the bosses more difficult and allowing those teams to do those huge trash pulls where they would just pull the whole room, all 4 packs together. Now with Fortified and Bursting, of course that gets a lot more difficult, so we see the teams pull a little bit slower, but they still pull 2 packs together, which is still difficult if you have 2 Witch Doctors which need to be constantly interrupted.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't have enough interrupts for 2 Witch Doctors with the Deathly Chill, so they're gonna leak some. Even with that Spell Reflect, that's only 1 technical interrupt there, so a lot of damage is gonna keep coming in on the tank, as unfortunately they're getting clipped on the side of Rentari here for 40k, getting clipped by some of those gales going off. You can see that blue gust debuff on the players. Lacelle Lofus follows suit as well, as Lighty takes a bit of chunk damage now. Nerf tank just dipping below 50%, nothing that JB can handle as they look to finish the rest of the trash before the Golden Serpent comes out as the first boss for the dungeon, which, as we mentioned earlier, has received a small but quite significant nerf in some ways as well, Nagura.
Yeah, definitely. So the debuff, the gold that gets applied to a random player that is not a tank, does a lot less damage now, so definitely easier to heal. I mean, it's also a fortified setting, so it would have been easier in the first place, but with the nerf, makes Tyrannical a little bit easier as well, because we know how much the healers always struggled on this boss to keep the people alive with this debuff. It was just doing a little bit too much damage, so the nerf definitely warranted.
Well, that's of course not available to the teams as they popped it earlier in this heavy fortified setting right now. Both starting here on the Golden Serpent as we reach 80% for Method and A. 40k just getting started, hitting that 90% mark with whatever cooldowns they have available to them. Rentari not yet popped Avatar, looks like, just waiting likely for the first gust before doing so. 40k just a bit behind here. And now, keep in mind, of course, those ooey gooey rich and chewies on the side aren't too dangerous, but Method and A actually combining the 2 constructs from the beginning that in Season 2 the meta was kind of to grab these during the gauntlet after the first boss. Method and A said, you know what, it's fortified. It's not a big deal, but Nerf Tank goes down, so pretty big deal here as the Battle Rest comes up, tries to salvage the pull, but he only has 1 taunt available. He can reset it with Heroic Leap, but there's 3 mobs, so they're going to need to be careful where these suppression slams are pointed right now as he grabs aggro. Yoda, unfortunately, still eating a bit to the face and gets that cheat death proc too, so Method and A looking a bit shaky as they try to get themselves and recompose here for the pull.
Yeah, it seems like those Guardians, because Nerf Tank went down, just are, you know, aggroing other players. They're just walking around in random places. And with this frontal cone, even though they changed it to only target the tank, if they're running around all over the place, it's still very difficult to dodge for the melee. So now they seem to have recovered it at this point on Method and A's side. But this pull seems more difficult than it seemed at the very start after all, because we do have the 45, so of course those Guardians do have a lot of HP. And it makes sense for them to pull it on top of the boss instead of the Gauntlet later, because if the Gauntlet is buffed by Fortified, it's definitely not as easy as it was before.
Important to note as well, at least for our tank buddies out there, Rentari, unlike actually most of the tanks that we saw yesterday, is actually not running double defensive trinket, so he's not running the heal over time trinket, essentially the Urchin from Lady Ashby. He's opting to run Goring Crusted block, which gives you that extra crit rating on procs, something that Nerf tank is not. And it's weird, Nagur, because Nerf's known to love his offense. He's known to just get as much damages in on groups as possible, so it's interesting to see him going a bit more defensive here than Rentari. Nonetheless, 40K, both teams have actually finished the boss off now. 40K, of course, a bit behind trash percentage just because they did not do that dangerous construct pull, but I do expect that they're going to combine it into this gauntlet likely like we saw in Season 2.
Yeah, we'll see how difficult it's going to be for 40K if they pull those constructs on top of this gauntlet, because again, it's 45 now, so this gauntlet not as easy as it seems. You can see everyone dropped really low here, and the Guardians actually arriving here, so they did pull them, but we'll see how they manage because again, 45, this gauntlet definitely not as easy. There's a bunch of named mobs that are definitely dangerous if you don't deal with their mechanics properly.
A lot of damage coming in for damage over time from the bursting, of course, for 40K right now. Unfortunately, Igloo gets his Undulating Tides procced. We do know that that new Azerite trait is basically a dead trait. If you proc it after 45 seconds, you cannot reproc it. It just gives you single target damage and gives you an absorb shield should you dip below 50% HP. So we can see that debuff right now on Igloo. We can also see, of course, the HOTS rolling, kind of a new feature that we're trying out here for the viewers at home. You can see the healing over time effects rolling on the side of Method NA right now. Whenever the healer is targeted, JB, we can see is targeted right now, so we can see just how good the coverage is during a heavy bursting scenario.
Yeah, one thing to note, I think the 40K strategy where they actually pull the Guardians on top of the Gauntlet is saving them more time just because there's actual downtime in between the mobs spawning, and therefore you have free DPS. While Method NA definitely was slower on the first boss because they were having those Guardians on top. So it seems like 40K's strategy is more efficient if they can pull it off, and they're doing a really good job so far. You see the marks on the captain and on the named mobs here just because there's so many things they need to interrupt. With the whirlwind axis that needs to be interrupted, and also the lightning AoE that also needs to be knocked with Lascelles Ring of Peace or Resto Igloo's Techno.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Nagar. It seems like that was a strategy to bring the Colossi into the Gauntlet room that was already pretty superior. It seemed like it wasn't really necessary to try and combine it with something else. It's just a lot of danger with that first boss, and it almost actually ended up wiping Method NA. Fortunately, they were able to recover as they are working on the next part of their Gauntlet right now with Queen Wasi and, of course, the King on the side that does a quite horrendous Whirlwind Blade Storm that damages melee immensely, especially in these heavy melee comps. You have to be really careful to move away quickly for that. They await the final one, of course, the Archer. She does a lot of damage while the Raptor jumps around. We've seen it a million times here. 40K just now finishing up Queen Wasi and King Tamalji.
Yeah, you actually saw the mind control that happens on the Queen and the King here that actually cannot be dispelled by anyone because they don't have any offensive dispels in their team composition and their alliance, of course, so they don't have this Blood Elf racial to remove it either, so they just have to stand through the mind control. Usually it's not a big deal, but sometimes if there's any other ability overlapping with the mind control, it can be dangerous, but both teams managed to survive it just fine. Well, Method NA is already on this last pack, so Method NA pulling slightly ahead here.
Yeah, they have pulled slightly ahead, and both teams, the only advantage 40K really has right now is they have the Battle Res available, but within about 2 minutes, Method NA should have theirs up too, and there's nothing too dangerous happening until they start to enter the gooey room of Machimba, the second boss, which we'll have after this Tides combo with the Construct, but we have seen that typically this is skipped in Season 2, and once again, they are wasting no time by skipping right past that. Just not really efficient to cleave down that high health Construct as they head over into the next room, and usually there's a pretty substantial pull in this room. There's nothing also too dangerous by having the Tides in here. There's nothing you need to interrupt. There's nothing you really need to crowd control. So they're just going to combine both emissaries of the Tides. Huge pull coming in here for Method NA right now as they like to eke out as much damage as they can, but they have to be really careful to control the bursting at the end of this.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting to see how they're going to deal with the bursting. Now, of course, they do have the rogues who can finish off this pull, which is probably what's going to happen. Yeah, you see all the people who cannot immune are just running away while the rogues, Shakib and Yoda, are just going to finish off this pack while cloaking off the debuff. You can see 14 bursting stacks on Shakib when he used his cloak, and there we go. They finished off the pack. Very well done by Method NA, and everyone else was just outranging the bursting.
Nice and clean. Interesting on the side of 40K, though, they've actually combined those with one of the constructs, too. So we can see Igloo running away just to outrange the bursting right now. doesn't manage to do so, though. And Prox is undulating tides as well. A lot of damage coming in the group. Huge amount of healing over time on himself, Lizelle, and Rentari to make sure they stabilize, which they do. That was a close call, but no death on the board for 40K from that pretty aggressive pull.
Yeah, that was very, very well done by Igloo. He didn't manage to outrange it, but he still managed to keep everyone alive while having this many stacks. You saw, of course, Lizelle and Igloo popping all of their defensives to be able to survive the 9 stacks, I believe, that were on Igloo. Now, Method and A already on the boss here. They pulled the boss with the construct. So this is actually very dangerous because you get the entomb from the boss, and you also get the constructs putting you into one of those things on the side, so you gotta make sure that you get them out immediately before the boss cast, but they seem to be doing a very good job as they're just running around. Now, we talked about this before, how efficient it is to pull mobs on top of a boss, and it seemed to be, on paper, it seemed to be more efficient, but when we actually saw the teams pulling trash on top of bosses, they ended up being much slower, so we'll see if it works out for Method and A here.
Truthfully, these constructs don't do much, though, so it's not too bad to have them on top. However, you will lose some damage because they inevitably will port one of the players to one of the sarcophagi on the side there, and one of the tombs to make sure that they get trapped and start pulsing AoE, so JB has to run around and free them, and just the travel time alone. It's a bit of a DPS loss, but hopefully worth it for them, as once again, 40K has started on Machimba. Interesting to see if they're going to use their Bloodlust here as well. 2 different strats coming out in the past season, in Season 2 that is, where we either had Bloodlust popped on Machimba right away to try to chew through the health, or of course we had it for trash. Now, being in a fortified environment and knowing the danger that's coming on the bridge with the Berserkers I would expect that both teams hold on to their Bloodlust, and it looks like they're doing just that. Machimba now 25% for Method and A, 64% for 40K. They're just starting to pull slightly more and more ahead. Nothing too substantial yet, Nagura, but they're paving their way to just keep pulling away from 40K here.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a big leap because, again, it's 45, so the boss HP difference does not mean as much as if it was tyrannical. But still, I think the biggest lead they got from Method and A was when they were in this gauntlet area, and 40K was still dealing with the constructs, and therefore they were dealing with the gauntlet a little bit slower compared to Method and A. So maybe it still was paying off for Method and A to pull them on top of the first boss. It seemed like it was more efficient for them. But now we see a pretty crucial pull. At least it was a crucial pull in the spring season. Now, of course, they're probably going to be go a little bit slower than we were used to seeing, just because it's fortified, of course.
Yes, the old spell reflect on 2 mobs at the same time with the Hex Priest, a nice trick from Pro Warriors that they do there to pull them at the exact same time. Wanting to cleave everything, we can already see that there is an Emissary of Tides hanging out in the room just beyond this. Certainly not something you want to pull with the Hex Priests, as they will just, you can't interrupt not only their Hex, but the Spectral Bolt as well. That does an immense amount of damage on the tank. 40K wasting no time to rush upstairs right now and try to keep close to Method and A. They're 3% behind on trash, of course, because Method and A has cleared this first very dangerous pull. 40K just now getting started as a Shroud actually comes up from Method and A, opting to skip the combo of the Emissary of Tides along with the Beastmaster and going straight towards the Enchanted Emissary. It looks like they're actually going to double Shroud here as the blind comes up, second layer of Shroud comes, and they actually pull one of the middle packs of the bridge later on.
Yeah, so 40K actually popping their Bloodlust, they're doing a pretty big pull. So they not only pulled the first pack, but they also pulled some of the trash further on, while also rooting the Emissary of Tides here. So popping their Bloodlust to be able to finish off this pack. We see the bleed of the Berserkers being handled pretty well as well. Mostly it's the non-tanks who are taking the bleed from the Berserkers to be able to have Rentari be tankier and get the rest of the mobs. So very well done by 40K to do this huge pull. Well, Method and A is doing a pretty big pull themselves after using this double Shroud.
Double Shroud indeed. It looks like they just tried to get in the middle of the bridge and then collapse everything. Black hole style right on top of them with surrounding groups. That's exactly what they're doing there. As 40K only uses 1 Shroud here. We'll see if they deal with the Enchanted Emissary as well. Again, reminder for the Beguiling, the Enchanted Emissary does reflect all damage of any members within that aura. Looks like they stopped just short of that. They're skipping the Berserker, or the Hulk rather, and they're just dealing with the Beastmaster pull before they move further down the bridge. Igloo unfortunately getting clipped and actually proccing his Ashara staff. That's a 10-minute cooldown, so that's an immense amount of healing and damage that I can do. So he's not really going to have that available for the rest of the dungeon, something that healers try to hold on to so that they can build charges and have just an immense numerical hit essentially, or nuke by the end of the dungeon. So not good for Igloo. Advantage there for JB as they are cleaning up now the rest of the bridge.
Yeah, so if you look at the percentage, Method and A pretty far ahead at this point, because not only do they have more percentage right now, they're also about to finish off a bunch more mobs, and therefore going to be even further ahead. So Method NA definitely establishing their lead here as they're on their way to the third boss, the Council boss. Now we talked about the Council boss a lot because there was a very difficult mechanic to deal with those axes, the debuff that gets applied to one of the players by one of the bosses, but it actually got nerfed as well, so that should not be a problem anymore, especially on a fortified setting.
Especially in a fortified setting. Rentaria, I gasped there because Rentaria, as we were talking, just did to 2% HP with that Berserker bleed on him, and then he got a Frost Shock from the Witch Doctor nearby, but managed to survive as Method NA aggressively pulls a Berserker down on top of Kula the Butcher, so a lot of damage that can come in on the group. We see a bleed already present on Nerf the Tank. Method is really aggressive with their pulls in this King's Rest. I like to see this trash combination with the bosses. I don't think it was really worth on the Golden Serpent, just because you're going to get those 2 constructs in anyways at the Gauntlet, but the rest of it has been great, and it's really just allowing them to pull further and further ahead. Struggles here for 40K, though, as Rentaria dips to 5% health. A lot of damage coming in, and Igloo just having not an easy time here trying to heal him up and keep him present. You could see all the rows of defensives and healing over time effects on Rentaria right now, just to try to keep him alive as he gets more Berserker bleeds bursting on top of it, and a poison on the group right now. So much damage needing to come in on the group, and only 2 people can dispel that poison. They got to be careful where they point that frontal. Method NA, no problem though, already cleaning up Kula and getting ready for the second boss.
Yeah, I think they had some. Lovis actually going down here for 40K as he had the poison debuff on him. No one was able to dispel that debuff, so him going down after proccing the cheat death. I think they had a problem with the setup here, as one of the casters in the back, Lovis going down again by the Raptor jumping there, so they do have one more battle rest, but they should be able to just save it and get it off later. Never mind, they're using it, getting Lovis up to be faster, so they're out of battle rests at this point.
I think they heard you and they just wanted to disagree with you. So they popped it right away. So indeed, no battle is available for about 3.5 minutes now for 40K as they like to try to finish off the rest of the bridge. I feel like 40K has been stuck at this part of the bridge for 10 minutes now. It's just been a very slow grind for them. 3 deaths on the board, no battle reses. Berserker gets re-CC'd as they move over to the final 2 Berserkers. We see a blind come up, which immediately gets hit by Rentaria, I guess, just to maintain aggro, make sure he doesn't hit anybody. And then they run in, and it looks like Shadow Meld or Vanish, just to make sure that they drop all that aggro. Zanazal, though, for Method NA, looking great. Already down the second of this 3-boss kind of council-style fight, cleaning up the rest of the totems, and they're getting ready for Aka Ali, the final of the boss encounter.
Yeah, so one thing to note for the council fight is in between the boss spawns, you can actually use your Shadow Melt or your Vanish to actually get out of combat and reuse one of your potions, for example, which we've seen those teams doing. You can also use your Shadow Melt or your Vanish to get rid of any sort of debuff. If you still have a Severing Axe from Kula, for example, when Kula goes down, then you can just use your Shadow Melt or your Vanish, and your debuff will drop immediately because you drop out of boss combat. So one tiny little trick that those teams have been doing in the past. Another trick that people have been doing is this barrel through, where they would just Vanish or Shadow Melt at the very end of the cast to basically just have the ability to be casted again, because while the barrel through is being casted, Akali really doesn't do anything, just standing there casting.
Unfortunately, Kula axing Igloo a question just at the end of the encounter there and putting the Sever Axe. Does not have the Shadow Meld available, as Nagura just hinted to, because they used it to skip the trash and also dip sub 50%, so procced Undulating Tides on top of it. So a nasty little debuff right at the end, unfortunately. Just even more grievances here for 40K as they're working on Zanazal halfway through the encounter now, 50% on the second boss. Method NA Orly cleanly moving up. They have 91% trash on the board as JB runs over and is likely going to pull the Raptors here along with the Beastmaster and then combine it maybe with the Shadow of Zul.
Wow.
If they do, this is going to be a pretty nasty pull coming up right now, especially in a fortified setting.
Yeah, so this mini-boss is actually one of the most difficult mini-bosses to deal with, especially on Fortified, because we all know mini-bosses actually get buffed by Fortified and not by Tyrannical. So this Shadow of Zul, we've talked about this mini-boss before. Even in Tyrannical, it seemed like a very difficult mini-boss to deal with, but on Fortified, pulling Raptors and a Beastmaster on top of this seems very dangerous. That's why they actually saved their Bloodlust for this very moment. You can see them popping their Bloodlust here, and look at the HP of Nerf Tank, and look at JB just spam healing Nerf Tank to be able to keep him alive here. Still, Shield Wall is available, so he's probably going to use it very soon. There we go, he popped a Shield Wall, and now it's all going to be on JB to keep him alive here.
Yeah, I mean, this is scary. He's doing whatever he can with Spell Reflect. Of course, you cannot actually Spell Reflect the Shadow Bolts anyways, but at least you're providing that 15% damage reduction, magic damage reduction buffer. Nerf goes down, though, but they do have the Battle Res. Immediately it comes up from JB. Shakib, unfortunately, takes a hit, tries to run around and avoid some of the damage coming in. They're saving grace here, of course. The Raptors only very minimally aggro somebody and target somebody. Otherwise, they just kind of jump in place and cleave in front of them. So they manage once again to escape near disaster as Method and A finish up what they need to, head downstairs and try to skip and line of sight that Void Emissary that is very meanly placed at the bottom of that of the stairwell there. King Dazar has now been pulled for Method and A, though.
Yeah, so Method and A just doing this whole bridge area so much faster compared to 40K. Up until the bridge, they were neck and neck, they were really close to one another, but 40K just wasting so much time with this bridge pool and having the whole setup where we saw some of the CC not hitting properly. We actually see Rentari going down here as well while trying to do one of the skips. So they're just struggling a little bit with this bridge area, while Method and A seem to be much more efficient and much cleaner here. As they're on the last boss with this Beastmaster still alive, I believe this Beastmaster is not going to be enough for them to get enough percentage, so they probably have to kill anything else after this boss. But 40K only 96% as well, so we'll see what they do. I think the mini boss should be enough for them, so we'll see. But Method and A on the last boss, we talked about King Dazar before. King Dazar, not as difficult as long as you dodge the tornadoes and you dodge Reban, for example, jumping around doing this frontal cleave. Other than that, there's not that much damage going on except the jump from King Dazar, but that one can be avoided as well.
There are indeed lots of yumps on this fight. Tsala has come out now at 60% for phase 3 of 4 on this final boss here. Indeed, as you mentioned, Nagura, so the Shadow of Zul kind of mini boss does give 4%, so 40K is good to go as soon as they kill Shadow of Zul. Method and A is missing 4%. Question mark. I'm not really sure where they're going to get it from. I mean, the Void Emissary does not give 4% in a dungeon. That's the only thing within close proximity of them. I do think that, I'm not sure if they kill the Beast Hunter. I did see them kind of paralyze it on the side. Nonetheless, King Dazar now at 45% for Method and A. We'll see exactly where they round up their final percent of the dungeon for. I would expect them, of all teams, not to forget their percentage, so they probably have something up their sleeve right now. 40K just about to finish the Shadow of Zul, getting their 100% in a moment, unless we just have an issue. Okay.
Yeah, it's a mistake.
Okay. So it's a mistake. Both teams are actually at 100%. Indeed right now. Shadow of Zul, just an error with what you see on the stream. He does give the 4%. Both teams are technically done with trash. So everything looking good actually for Method and A. Scratch everything I just said for the past 30 seconds. Method and A looks like they're about to claim this match in a moment.
Yeah, so Method and A just it seems so clean. They do have 2 deaths on the board, but it didn't cost them a lot of time at all. We saw Nerf Tank go down in the first boss, but they recovered very well. And again, 100% trash for both of those teams. It's just Shadow of Zul that is not counting properly for the graphic on stream. So they do have all bosses killed and all trash. There we go. First game for Method and
majority right there. So, but you know, jokes aside, Method and A had an incredible performance in this dungeon versus Method EU. They still lost to Method EU, but by only mere seconds here. So I mean, we're going to expect, I'm going to have to set up Twitch chat on this one, Nigger. I think Method and A is probably going to take this if they manage to maintain the same performance they did last time.
Yeah, it looks like a huge pull coming in for 40K here as Rentari drops really low with all the necrotic stacks, while also having the bleeds from those ticks as well. But they seem to have recovered here as the emissary is disappearing and they only have to deal with the matron here and the rest of the middle pack. But Method and A completely shouting past this whole trash pack at the very start, going straight to this mask trash and also pulling the patrol while also popping that bloodlust.
Yeah, interesting. We've actually seen a few teams do this. I guess they've now deemed that in this season the mask is indeed the most dangerous kind of unit on this field before the first boss, so they want to coordinate their bloodlust and all of their cooldowns and dedicate it to killing that mask before just backpedaling a bit and backtracking a bit to make sure that they kill the remaining trash that they need before the dungeon. Shakib unfortunately proccing his cheat death there just the very end with that last headhunter as they finish it off and start heading down the path to the first boss. Rentari going down on the side of 40K. Keep in mind we've swapped affixes here for this dungeon. It's from an affix perspective probably the nastiest dungeon in the pool for this first cup of the Western of the Western side of things. I mean, we got Raging and Necrotic. That is just tank disaster waiting to happen.
That was actually a very cool skip by 40K here. And so the matrons actually do have True Side, and there was a patrol on the bridge. So what they were doing was one of the ropes was grappling hooking to the bridge without getting aggroed by a matron, and then the rest of it was just wild charging in a human form to one of the ropes to be able to skip this pack here without getting aggroed. So very well done by 40K here. It does look very cool. While Method NA is already on 35% on Elderly Exa, and Fourty K slightly behind here.
I mean, I just blinked and basically Leaxa's already dead here for Method NA with the power of just huge amounts of damage, cooldown coordination, spell reflect, and of course this fortified environment. Bosses just have less health and are less dangerous as a result. You know, it's interesting to see. I mean, the shift away, Leaxa's a boss that we've always feared very much, just with one-shot potential on the tank, but it's over time, over the course of Season 2 and now into Season 3, just becomes kind of a joke. It's like no team ever struggles with it. You barely see any wipes on it. All the teams are usually dedicating their resources, offensive cooldowns, bloodlust, etc., to other things, whether it be trash or even saving it for Kragmaw's room. Method NA sneaking into Kragmaw's room here. Now, Season 2, we saw Method NA. This room is a bit of kryptonite for them, Nagura. They had a lot of struggles in here. Either the tank or JB would die. They seem to have cleaned it up yesterday, but do you think they kind of still have some of those nerves?
Yeah, I mean, they lost to Method EU, right? But it was super close. And Method NA was just barely not making it. And it seemed like they had a very clean run as well. So I feel like they're confident in this strategy this time around. If they would have just been slightly faster, they would have beaten Method EU, right? So I feel like if it's this close to you beating Method EU, you don't want to change your strategy completely. You're just confident that you just, you know, maybe change a very small thing here and there to be slightly faster. But I think mostly they're going to keep this strategy just because it was working so well. You see 40K though having a completely different strategy. They were playing the early room very different, and now they're playing this room very different as well. As you can see, Rest really having a lot of aggro though, and getting all those necrotic stacks, being able to recover here though and dropping them off.
Yeah, Necrotic is quite dangerous in this room, and we are once again in a Tides-heavy dungeon. So more Emissary of the Tides present, meaning more mobs surrounded that cannot get interrupted or crowd-controlled. Very dangerous in this room. We got the Swarmers in there that are just doing the screech and meleeing players. Finally, Bloodlust comes out here for 40K with it, does this pretty substantial pull as they keep the Enchanted Emissary away, making sure that it doesn't cause any troubles. And of course, we do have a crowd-controlled Maggot on the side there as they try to chew through this. Resto taking so much damage, though, just constantly dipping sub 50, cannot manage to get up. He has double fixate from those Blood Swarmers, the most dangerous mob in here. They are now raging as well, dealing 100% increased damage after they hit that 30% mark. So a lot of danger coming in as he tries to soothe desperately on that 10-second cooldown and just calm things down here.
Yeah, so one thing to note as well, which is not very significant, but 40K actually switching to the triple rogue opposed to the double rogue and Windwalker that they were playing in the King's Rest before. So they actually valuing the rogues a lot more in this dungeon, not only because of the damage, but also because of the insane amount of single target control that rogues provide. They do have the cheap shots, the gouges, the blind, the interrupts that just help so much in this dungeon because there's so many things that need to be controlled. Like you can see the death speakers here. You have the fixates going out, the megas that need to be interrupted. So Rogue's just providing so much utility for this dungeon here.
And of course, the tanks have now swapped to Dwarf, or at least Dark Iron Dwarf. You can see Fireblood available there for Rentari. So going to use that importantly to cleanse his necrotic stacks, which is now about, he's about to hit 30 on them. So just making sure he stays in the last second. They haven't, of course, been cleaned as he continues to move away from those mobs and just make sure he's not taking too much damage, not committing too many resources before heading over to Kragmaw. Method NA, huge trouble coming in right now as the Maggot gets a frontal enraged breath on the group, immediately wiping them. I mean, that's 100% increased damage on something that's already quite lethal in this fortified environment. So, you know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we were talking about Method NA having struggles traditionally in Season 2 in this room, and they followed suit again here, Nagura.
Yeah, that's a huge mistake. I mean, they're going to lose so much time. If I'm being completely honest, I think 40K was already ahead even before Method NA wiped here, because 40K is already on 50%. They were doing this room much faster than Method NA did. And as you mentioned, they're just struggling specifically in this Kragmaw room. I'm not sure if it's their strategy just themselves overdoing, thinking they can do those huge pulls and then not working out, or if it's just like specifically this room causing problems for them. Also, one thing I want to note is the Maggot cast going through, definitely, you know, they have this Windwalker instead of having the triple rogue. And I talked about the single target utility that the rogues provide. Maybe that was actually a problem, just, you know, Monk not providing as many interrupts, single target stuns, and so on, compared to rogues, and maybe that's what happened. Maybe they just ran out of interrupts to be able to interrupt this Maggot.
Maybe. I mean, we could take a look, of course, after the VOD. Hopefully, you know, Tettle's had a good eye on that. But, you know, it's hard to say. Maybe he had Ring of Peace available. Maybe he had Paralyze available. Maybe there was just bad communication, and somebody that was expected to get that Maggot bump there did not. And, well, I mean, that's all she wrote. Method and A now 6 deaths on the board, still slowly trying to move over and recover as JB casts Revitalize yet again to get Nerf up off the ground. They continue with the second room. 40K here looking great, looking primed to win this match. For now, we're only about halfway through here, but Kragmaw sitting at a good 60% for them as he gets ready for his next Dangerous Tantrum, of course, where the players will need to stomp out these glowing larvae on the ground so they don't transform into ticks.
Yeah, one more thing to know with this Maggot Breath, of course, is they're not bad players because they obviously assign someone to interrupt this cast. So you don't move out of the cast because this is a dodgeable ability in theory, right? The Maggot cast you will target a player and they will do a frontal clone. So in theory, you can walk out of it, but if you expect one of your team members to interrupt it, you're not gonna move because in this environment, if you have a team and you're participating in the MDI, then obviously you trust your team member to do their job, and therefore one of them just didn't do their job or didn't have their ability ready, and that's why they all died here. It was a one-shot too because they were raging at the same time, right? 40K though, not having any issues like that. They only have this one death from Rentari at the very start of the dungeon to those ticks, right? And they're about to finish off Kragmaw here.
Yeah, I mean, after that, if I'm someone on Method and A, I would never be able to trust and love again. They've let me down for the final time. But Kragmaw here, 3% in just a moment as 40K tries to finish up the rest of the encounter, committing to not stomping any of the remaining ticks out and just getting ready to move on through the dungeon. Likely a Shroud coming up here, as we've seen in the previous series of Underrot yesterday. Don't want to deal with this Enchanted Emissary right on top of the Danger Noodle. So moving right on through here as they prepare to pull the Guardians. Not sure if they're going to combine anything with the Guardians, and there is an Emissary of Tides in there, meaning that that Death Speaker in there is going to have free range to cast, as is the Bloodswarmer that they've just pulled down. So they have to get rid of that Emissary very quickly.
Oh, they actually had to raise that cast go through. So we see one of the reanimated Guardians spawning here. And you see Wolf Disco dropping very low because of this the Fixate from the Bloodswarmer that they pulled. Now this is very interesting because usually we don't see those Bloodswarmers pulled just because Bloodswarmers are the mobs you want to avoid at all costs because they do so much damage. But with all the control that they're having with those rogues, with the single target stuns, you have the Vortex as well that can help out with the Fixate. They just seem confident to get this extra percentage here. And it's basically free percentage because you're just pulling it on top of the Guardian. So definitely very well done by them, as they also pull the Defiler here as well.
The Defiler indeed does join the pack right now. Rentari deems that it's okay to return to the group. He did use his Fireblood earlier. I think there's just a bit of an issue on the cooldown, but we did see the Necrotic on the cooldown display for that ability, but we did see the Necrotic stacks drop off of Rentari there as he continued to tank and then safely backed off during the raging just to make sure they don't deal with that. Now, most teams here are moving on to the third boss that we've seen so far in the season at least, to actually kind of move along the side of it and then combine it with the boss later, or as we're seeing right now, just combine it directly into the boss. But what they do is a two-step process of separating the emissaries and the defilers. Of course, the last thing you want is an emissary on top of 2 defilers that is preventing spell interrupts.
Yeah, one thing to note as well with Rentari being a dwarf, that means of course that Rentari does not have the Shadow Melt available. Now in most other dungeons we see teams lose a lot of time if they don't have the Shadow Melt on all the players, but in this Underrot we don't usually see huge skips happening at all. Only at the very start of the dungeon sometimes and before they go to Kragmaw's room, but 40K dealing with this very well, that they don't have this Shadow Melt available to them. So really good job by using this dwarf here to just have an easier time dealing with the Necrotic, and it worked out for them so far. You see Rentari unfortunately refreshing to 23 stacks before he managed to leap away. We might see a taunt come out here by Igloo to be able to reset the stacks. There we go. He actually managed to get it off.
Yeah, so the only safe time during this boss when you can really reset your stacks as a tank is during that Festering Harvest cast where you want to move opposite side of the room, but it's sometimes just barely not enough time. But fortunately they do manage to clean the stacks there. As Nagura mentioned, we saw earlier Lofus committing his Cloak of Shadows as well to mass soak the mushrooms before they went off during those Festering Harvest cast. Of course, there's no monk or priest or paladin available in this group right now, so they have no way to dispel the disease from the mushrooms. So the only way to kind of emergency soak them is to pre-immune and run through them. Or I guess somebody could just soak them and just mass heal through it. But they do pack quite a punch here as Zancha hits 25%. Method and A still trying to claw back into action. Sporecaller Zancha for them just hitting 70% and 73% trash on the board.
Yeah, Method and A actually managed to catch up quite a bit now. Now they're still behind in trash percentage, 7% behind and 50% in boss HP. Of course, on top of also having a 25 seconds difference, so there's still quite a lot for Method and A to go, but they did recover pretty well from this full team wipe. Sometimes you see a team having a full team wipe and then they just fall even further behind because they struggle to maintain their, their motivation and to keep going. But Method and A, of course, being this veteran team, keeping a cool head and just continuing, trying to still win.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you see teams, just RP walking or something, or dancing in animal form if they've wiped miserably in the dungeon, but not on the side of Method and A here. Spore Caller's Launch about to hit 20%. Fourty K now doing a pretty substantial pull, but the same pull that we've seen other teams do. Emissary once again present in the pack. I think it's just part of the strat of the teams, Dagor, where they just kind of commit to the fact that Array's dead is probably going to get off. They just don't have the DPS to kill the Emissary fast enough. They don't want to be inefficient and separate the two parties, so they're just going to cleave a Guardian down. I mean, it's really not a big deal if you think about it. Yeah. It's just an extra Guardian when there's already 4 or 5 of them present anyway, so you just cleave it down, Forehead. Now, we do pull the Defiler on top of the rest of the pack right now. The Corruptor has Enraged. They want to make sure they get away from those Abyssal Strike Tentacles. Those are an easy one-shot in Fortified Raging environment.
Yeah. Method and A also catching up quite a bit in percentage here while they were fighting Sanja. So I think they actually pulled quite a bit of trash on top of the boss. So very well done by Method and A to catch up on the trash percentage here. But they're doing the pull now that Fourty K is already done with. Fourty K only has to deal with those 2 Corruptors and the Emissary of Tides here. Then the doors will open and they will be able to get to the last boss. One thing as well, Fourty K does have Bloodlust available to them for the last boss, while Method and A does not. They used it on Sancha to get rid of the trash on top of the boss. So Fourty K is still needing to have a full team wipe really at this point for Method and A to catch up.
I don't think they need to do that. Hopefully they don't do that. Corruptor is now enraging here for 40K as they're looking to wrap this up and head downstairs. Method and A still trying to hold their own, doing the same pull we just saw earlier, where we were just commenting on the race that cast going through, etc. with all the Guardians. They're trying to clean that up right now as they hit 90% trash. They'll probably be at about the same 94 that 40K has finished off to get their 100% and head downstairs through the door, quote unquote, more of like a spiderweb wall thing. But nonetheless, the Sparks of Love have now disintegrated the web going down, and unlike the previous season, we have no Reaping Wave to wait for down here. So as soon as they hit the ground, they're going to grab the boss and just start their nice circular rotation and chew through that health 3 times over.
Yeah, so the only thing that can go really wrong here, in my opinion, for 40K is if Igloo goes down. If Igloo goes down, somehow they, of course, cannot get him back up because no one has a battle rest except himself on this Druid. So if he somehow goes down by getting hit by a Spore or the front or anything like that, any sort of burst combination, then they will have trouble finishing off the boss without him. But we've seen some teams even finishing this boss without a healer in the past, so we'll see what happens here. But right now they seem to be doing really well, and of course we don't see the boss dropping because it's the energy bar that is depleting instead of the HP, and then we see those Blood Visages spawn, and once those die, the HP will get removed.
1/6 HP each of those 6 mobs right there to finish off the boss. And but I mean, if Igloo is about to die, he can just precast Battle Res on himself, right, Nagira, and not have any struggles as a result. But it looks like they should be easily able to clean this up. Right now. Thanks, Jack. That was very nice of you. They should be easily able to clean this up right now. I mean, once again, fortified environment. There's no reaping on top of it. Just a sporadic, unlucky spore spawning on the players would be the only disastrous thing to get Elser-added, so to speak, on this, since he seems to be very unlucky with those spores. Seems to always happen to him. But Unbound Abomination now about to get the 4th add down. There we go. And Method and A only starting now. Method and A has been so clean so far between yesterday and today, but this is their first real hiccup. And to be fair, even before this yesterday, they were just spotless. Yeah. But even in King's Rest, they had a couple of moments that were looking a bit dire.
Yeah, to be honest, in this King's Rush, when Nerf went down on his very first boss, it could have been a disaster. So definitely some hiccups here. And in this time in Underrot, they didn't manage to recover. While 40K having a really clean run and evening it out 1-1 for 40K.
Picking environment, so teaming makes it even nastier. Both teams right away grabbing everything they can in the first room and jumping right over, at least soon enough we'll be jumping over, I assume, to that Brazier. There goes Nerf's tank immediately snapping everything as somebody makes sure to bump the Enchanted Emissary out of the way. Interested to see 40K actually doesn't do that. They just round everything up alone.
Yeah, interesting. I think we haven't really seen this before, that they don't use the snapping strategy. But of course, snapping is not as simple as it seems, because we've seen Method U, for example, struggle a lot with this snapping strategy, where they would snap everything on the lantern, but then some of the mobs ending up resetting, and then they will hit the melees because the tank is out of range while they are kiting, so they can't regain the aggro, and then they, they just have some random daps going down because of the snapping strat. So maybe 40K had some struggles with it in practice, and they just chose not to do so. They were finishing off this trash a lot slower compared to Method A, though. Method A already on the first boss with the 10% trash, while 40K is still dealing with this trash early on.
And of course, what's even more interesting is if you want to see, but actually, let's put what is interesting on hold here. Lighty, unfortunately, does not get the skip properly in, so not only is he dead on the floor, they'll need to use the res 5-second penalty on that, but he will not have that cheat death available for 6 minutes. But I was going to say, you already see some strategies differing between the two teams here, and if you want to take a closer look individually at the team, we have now squad streaming available, so make sure you enable that squad streaming when it prompts you on the main Warcraft stream. You can actually take a nice full screen view at the individual teams should you be interested in following one of the teams and seeing exactly what they're doing in a nice zoomed in fashion. But Method NA wasting no time and grabbing Heldis, as we've seen other teams do, right on top of Akusir, the best design boss here, and getting a lot of the benefit from that haste rune that he puts down. But of course, this puts a huge strain on the healers with that pulsing dust.
Best design boss indeed. We see Method NA not actually using that Bloodlust here, which is very interesting because this seems like a very difficult pull. Not only do you have to deal with this boss, which is a very annoying boss, by the way, but it's also tyrannical. And then you have the mini boss and the apprentices. So interesting to see that they're not using their Bloodlust. I wonder what they're saving it for. One thing to note as well is, of course, we do have different affixes, teaming and quaking. And about Shrine, they did change how the percentage gain from trash works in this dungeon. And with teaming, you have the trash be worth even less percentages because there's more trash in the whole dungeon available to you. So teams definitely said that they were struggling to get in percentage to get the 100% in Shrine of the Storm, and therefore they do need to pull some of those mini bosses like Heldis, as we can see from Method NA, which is something they didn't do in the past in the spring season, where they would just skip all the mini bosses.
Indeed, yeah. So the mini bosses are something we're going to expect to see. Definitely Heldis, as we saw earlier from Method NA, is something that all the teams seem to be pulling now. Sorn as well, once we get to the Rune Carver area after the first boss. We've seen a kind of 50-50 split on the Guardian Elemental on the bridge. Some teams opted to just combine him and burn him down. Some skipped him, some tried to skip him and didn't do it successfully. So they had to burn him down. We'll see what these teams do as 40K now gets started on Akusir as well. 90% on the board for them. Method NA already dealing with the transition that hits at 50%, cleaving down these Aqualings before he will reunite into his full form again at around 15% HP, and then they'll be able to move on. Did we see Heldis get pulled by 40K as well?
I don't think so.
No, so Heldis is still on the side there for 40K. They've only pulled some of the apprentices on the side, so a bit below. I was actually going to say a bit slower on trash percent, but they're actually ahead. They just didn't pull everything yet that Method NA has, so no wonder they got to the boss a bit later here.
Yeah, so they were doing more trash before this first boss compared to Method NA. Method NA only did this very first pull with the snapping, so they got 10% before running to the boss immediately, and then the rest of the percent, the 8% that they have right now, is the trash they pulled on top. Well, 40K did 2 trash pulls before Aquasir, so that's why 40K actually ends up having more trash percentage, and therefore they're a little bit further behind when it comes to boss damage. One thing though, that 40K actually did use their Bloodlust once they pulled Aquasir on top of having some trash as well, while Method NA is still holding on to theirs. I assume they're gonna save it for some trash pull later, maybe that pull in that hallway that we've seen Method and Abrakedabra do.
Or maybe next dungeon. We'll have to see exactly where they decide to use it. Method now 22, 23, 25% trash on the board, and are now moving on. They've already killed Heldis, so they're now moving on to Sorn's room in the bottom. We've seen some very aggressive pulls come out of groups here as they're going to run right past this Void Enchanted Emissary, ignored completely by line of sighting and ranging the cast in the first place, and then likely shadow melded off after they've dealt with all the trash in this room. This is a huge pull coming in here, and there's the Bloodlust finally from Method NA as they just get everything rounded up together. Immediate shockwave comes out of Nerf Tank there just to make sure to stabilize everything. A lot of casters in there while the players huddle in to the rune on the ground dropped by Rune Carver Sorn to make sure that they mitigate 70% of that incoming damage.
Yeah, and it's actually 70% of all damage incoming, so if you get the quaking, you do not need to go out of it, even though you see them spread out anyway, but you don't have to. You can just stack on top of each other with the quaking because it's 70% reduction for everything, so they can definitely just stand in there for all of the damage incoming. Now we see 40K, they're about to down Aquas here. You can see them already moving a little bit ahead. Unfortunately, they get one more surging rush here at the very end, but they're about to do the same pull, I believe, but they don't have their Bloodlust available, so maybe they're choosing to do a little bit of a smaller pull, and they also have Held is still available.
Yeah, just creepily off to the side there. I saw Held as you were talking too, but it looks like they're just going to stealth past. Now, Void Emissaries in the hallway here, they do have True Sight, so you're not going to be able to use that Shroud all the way through the hallway. They just use it for Heldis himself as they run downstairs. Rentari grabs everything in the room. Same pull. Actually, I don't think they pulled the corner pack.
Oh, yeah.
There is a four-unit corner pack there consisting of a few apprentices, including 2 Iron Hulls. So they did a slightly smaller pull, which makes sense. They didn't have access to that Bloodlust, and they pulled more at the beginning of the dungeon. Nerf Tank in just a bit of trouble here right now, dipping sub 20%, but JB managing to stabilize the situation as they've pulled the trash before the Guardian Elemental bridge into the room as well to make use of that rune on the floor as needed.
Yeah, very smart play by Method and A to just keep the rune from the mini-boss from Zorn here alive to get the 70% reduction while also dealing with the next trash pack. 40K, again, just doing a little bit of a smaller pull, so maybe that's why they had 2 pulls before Aquas here, because they didn't want to have this bigger trash pull that Method and A did. Maybe they just didn't think it was safe to do, and now they're actually pulling it on top, so they did aggro it now. Loaf is actually proccing the cheat death here on this pull, but yeah, 40K just a little bit slower on this trash here. While Method and A already passed the bridge, they are using their Shadow Meld to get rid of the aggro from the bridge mini-boss, and yeah, Method and A just pulling ahead here.
Yeah, pulling slightly ahead, and now of course you saw earlier they left one of the Spiritualists out of the group and just cleaved it down what looked like inefficiently by itself after that big pull, but they had to do so because there was an Emissary of Tides present in that group that would have prevented interrupting the rapid mending, and therefore some of the mobs would have been healed, and that's the last thing you need. Runecarver Storm finally going down here for 40K, as we'll see exactly how, if they deal with the Guardian Elemental on the bridge. They still have their own pull to deal with here of the Tides pack that I just mentioned. We can see the roots come up on it right away as they pull the remaining mobs back into the room. Mending Rapids should be able to be interrupted now. It's well out of range there, as Method and A did a pretty substantial pull before the second boss here. I do expect that they're going to combine a lot of these smallies, as we call them, or initiates, with the second boss here. We are in a tyrannical environment, and this next boss, we've actually seen teams struggle already this season with this boss, Nagura.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen
Gazelle 1% off.
We see them drop really low, but 40K is still 0 death, so they seem to have recovered as Igloo is popping that Tranquility to keep everyone alive here. But Method and A, you know, they're already on their way to the second boss. It's just very difficult fight, and again, it's a tyrannical setting, so this boss is getting just this much more difficult. They're pulling some of the initiates on top, which is not a huge problem because we don't have anything like bursting or necrotic, so those mobs are not going to be a huge deal to just passively cleave down. But yeah, we've talked about Gale Color Fae and the cast, the Slicing Blast that needs to be interrupted. We see actually Lastel going down on the skip for 40K, but I think they managed, so all they have to do is get the Mass Rest going and should be fine.
But once again, we see Igloo has procced his Ashara staff. That's a 10-minute cooldown. Not going to have that available for later in the dungeon with higher charges. Something that JB, well, let's have a look here. Is JB using the staff? He should be. He is indeed. Okay, so he has not procced the staff, safe to keep those charges for later in the dungeon, where they'll become more beneficial with a bigger hit. Resto is now out of it for 10 minutes, essentially. 40K doing the same pull that we saw earlier come from Method and A before the ramp leading up to the second boss. Gale Color Fae now down to 57% health for Method and A as they opt to do a more efficient cleave strategy, but of course dangerous mechanically by leaving both bosses alive longer.
Yeah, and one thing I've noted before is Gale Color Fae, once she has 100% energy or 100 energy, she will buff herself. And if she has the buff up and you interrupt one of the Slicing Blasts, she will spawn those tornadoes, as you can see around this room. Now, when we were playing this in the spring season with the fortified affix, then people would just not interrupt the Slicing Blast and heal through it once the buff was up, just to not have those tornadoes spawn, because it was more efficient for the DPS to not having to dodge those tornadoes. But on a tyrannical setting, I assume it's just going to be too much damage to not interrupt them, and therefore you do have those tornadoes going around in the room, which makes this fight a lot more difficult. Makes it
a lot more difficult indeed. I'm going to be curious to see, Nagura, what happens after this boss, because that's where kind of a lot of well, a few things have changed. We see teams pretty aggressively pulling even the Ritualists coming up, and certainly a lot of the Enforcers to make up for the percent, not only for teaming, but just because they've rebalanced a lot of the percentage in the dungeon. We do know the Eels at the end in Volzith's room have now decreased count, so you need well over 80% before getting to the last room. Lofus going down here, unfortunately eating the frontal from Brother Ironhall. I guess he missed his breakfast, but does manage to get battle res immediately. Not going to be available again for 9 minutes or so. So they're really playing in hardcore mode at the moment.
Yeah, and they're out of battle reses now, and this boss, we talked about it, it's difficult with having all those tornadoes around on a tyrannical setting. So if they lose one more player, they're either going to have to reset the boss or just finish the boss with 4 members. So we'll see how 40K is going to deal with this. Well, Method and A doing a really good job. They only have 1 death so far, still have 2 battle reses available, and they're about to down this boss. 60% trash already, so just 3% behind compared to 40K, and they're on their way to those difficult Enforcer pulls.
I think that might be the first time we've ever seen Ironhall die before Faye there.
Yeah.
They're actually, Method and A balanced it so perfectly to get maximum cleave efficiency, especially with the Blade Flares coming out from these 3 Outlaw Rogues. Of course, maximum danger, as you then have both bosses doing their mechanics for the duration of the fight, but worked out for them. Igloo has procced his Undulating Tides, won't be available again for 45 seconds now, so that shield safety net, not to mention single target damage, is gone from Igloo. So a bit of a hit there for 40K as they still deal with the rest of the boss. They're doing the exact same thing as well, as both bosses approach 50% on the right side. Nerf Tank goes down though, and Lighty immediately procs Cheat Death on this very dangerous pull that Nagur just mentioned. We're getting Ritualist Cast go off. You can see the Shadow Bolt volley debuff. Lighty goes down. Shakib's at 2 stacks and just runs away desperately as JB has deemed this pull is now over. Runs away. Great heads up play by then to immediately just run away and drop combat so that they can salvage the pull. Oof.
Yeah, this was a huge pull. I think they were gathering 4 or 5 Enforcers on top of having some Ritualists. So this insane pull, we talked about this before, Enforcers just doing so much damage. Even if it's not fortified, it just does so much damage. Nerf Tank dying through that shield wall, I believe he had even shield wall and I think Iron Bark as well. So a lot of defensive cooldowns, but still just dying through it. So JB said, they did have battle rests available, but they just chose to get away and Shadow Melt instead of trying to rest, because once your tank dies on this Enforcer pull, you're just going to be done for it. You're not going to be able to get the aggro back, and you also don't have any defensives anymore. So we'll see if they manage to do this pull. They have to go a little bit smaller now, just because they don't have those defensives anymore.
That's true. It allows 40K to catch up just a bit. Gale Caller Faye about to fall here, so they've separated the percentage just a bit as Brother Ironhall is still at around 23% right now. Avatar just about to fade here for Rentari. He got his nice burst damage in, and they're doing what they can to finish that and capitalize on the idea, but they missed a Ritualist cast again here. A danger here for Method and A as another pulse goes off. Nerf Tank playing as defensive as he can and getting away. Tranquility already channeling here for JB to try and stabilize the group. That was a close call again, and Nerf Tank wants nothing to do with it. Just wants to get right out of there and let those Enforcers get kited so that he doesn't risk dying again.
Yeah, this is the chance for 40K, right? They are 63%, so they're not far behind in trash at all. They also have their Bloodlust available here, so we'll see how they do this pull. Maybe they do a smaller pull, because Rentari does have all the defensives ready, so they can do this Enforcer pull as well, but we've seen Method and A struggle, so maybe 40K is trying to go a little bit smaller.
No,
they're not. They're just pulling all their forces too.
I know they still have the 2 up on the stairs,
Sure.
but this is either 4 Enforcers or 5 Enforcers, something in there. So the deep smashes are really the danger that we keep gawking about here on the desk right now. We haven't seen Shield Wall pop just yet for Rentari. He's still kind of trying to milk the remainder of his last stand right now. Finally, Shield Wall gets popped. 8 seconds of 40% not diminishing return, damage reduction for Rentari. He starts to back up, and this group was much better done than Method and A here, as they managed to use the Ursul's Vortex at the very end to get rid of the Enforcers, help Rentari out, and everybody was maintaining proper kicks and interrupts on that Ritualist. So great for them there. They spread out for the Quaking and are ready to head up the stairs. Rentari goes ahead, grabs aggro, and they're likely just going to drop aggro on the bridge where Method and A is currently fighting.
Okay, so this is going to be really close now. 40K slightly slower on this area here. Method and A having 1 more death. So 5 seconds difference between those 2. And now it's all going to be about the rest of the dungeon. Whoever does the bridge part faster. But we've seen the bridge part in the King's Rest, and Method and A was a lot faster there. So we'll see how this bridge works out for 40K.
Yeah, let's see if they have to bridge the gap here between the difficulties they were having and this dungeon. Method and A now 80% as they grab another pull here. Now, something about about the emissaries is they're often, even though it looks like they're linked to packs, they're not actually. You can separate packs by pulling them very carefully, even if they're just patrolling slightly away from the emissary, which is, we see the result here for Method and A right now. That enchanted emissary is not really tied to anything, so it's just sitting there in the middle of the room. They're likely going to just mass stealth by it after they deal with the rest of this pack that they're chewing through right now. Fourty K still killing off the tentacles here, as we see the cultists just waiting for them to be pulled ahead. One of the Rip Mine casts did go through on Rentaro. You can see that huge hit that it gave, and of course the decreased health by 10% per stack finally faded off of him as Method and A mass stealths and heads on into Lord Stormsong's room.
Yeah, so Method and A on 84%. They still miss a little bit more percentage to be able to get into the last room. I believe it was 88% or something like that. They definitely need a little bit more to be able to go to the last area, because you don't only have the eels left and this middle pack, and the percentage of the eels got nerfed, so you don't get as much anymore as you did in the spring season, and therefore they need to heal a little bit more before they get there. 40K on their heals though, they're also on their way to get to those dwellers, and they're all on 84% as well, so this is definitely close between those two teams.
The moment JB's been waiting for finally procs his staff and deletes all of the lashers. Look at the damage on the board, 391k DPS, 5 million damage done for JB. That's the power of the Ashara staff, and that's why you want to wait as long as possible to get as many charges as possible before you incur the 10-minute CD before it's active again. So JB, well planned there, did the work, deleted the side that currently 40K is now working on in order to get access to Lord Stormsong, who of course is doing the RP in the background. 85% here for Method and A on Lord Stormsong. 5-second difference, sure, Nagura, but I mean, Method and A is like probably 20-30 seconds ahead at this point.
Yeah, definitely. You also see the percentage difference a little. Okay, so no, they have 89% on 40K as well, so definitely pulling the boss a little bit slower. This one death difference is really not going to make or break it at this point. Now, one thing to note about this staff play, this was definitely planned, as you mentioned, by JB, because there's also a Tides emissary in this right dweller pack, meaning that it can't actually interrupt or AoE stun to interrupt the lash cast, which does do a lot of damage if you don't have any sort of interrupts for it or any sort of defensive, which is you can't stun them if you have the Tides emissary. So very well done by Method and A to save this staff proc. Now for 40K, Igloo did not have the staff available. You can see the debuff in the party frame here, so they couldn't do the same thing. So they had to have a little bit of downtime before they ran into the dwellers, just because they needed to wait for some defensives to get up into some cooldowns to be able to kill them so they don't die while doing so. But yeah, Method and A 20% ahead on the boss here.
That's a lot of percent in a tyrannical environment right now. Huge pulsing Quake hitting there. Lizelle actually getting chunked down with the Rip Mine cast as well. Unfortunately, was one of the closest members to Lord Stormsong, but managed to just cleanse it off and not get that cheat death proc. Finally, the final Cloak of Shadows of the 6 rogues within this mirror match coming out from Lofus right now to try and prevent the mind control going out. So none of the rogues have a cloak to try and pre-immune that mind control cast anymore. Method and A now 17% on the board, and it looks like they're going for a strategy where they don't actually deal with any of these. Okay, I was going to say they don't deal with any of the orbs, but they'd let one player eat all of them up. But before this, anybody who was mind control, such as Yoda before, would just jump in the water and get rid of the mind control that way and just pool up as many orbs as possible. Shakib ate all of them except one there, so he's a hungry boy right now as Lord Stormsong falls here for Method and A, and they drag him over to the water, getting ready to move over to Bolzith's room.
Yeah, so we talked about the last boss, and on a tyrannical setting in the spring season, we would see teams save their bloodlust for the last boss just so they're able to one-phase the boss, to only get one intermission phase. Now we didn't see a team be able to one-phase the boss in this tyrannical setting in the summer season yet. But we saw one team actually get the boss really low, to 4%. I believe it was Abra that got the boss so low. So if one of those teams actually manages to one-phase, only get one intermission, that's going to be a huge advantage, because the intermission phase takes you a long time. No matter how good or how fast you are, to get one last intermission phase is just going to be a huge difference. So if one of those teams actually manages to do so, that would definitely seal the deal, and that team would win at this point, since they're so close to one another.
They are indeed. Method and A now sneaking into Volzith's room. 40K following suit. Was it just me, or was like Method and A a bit slow to get everything started here? It was kind of weird. I mean, they were out of this tunnel well ahead, but I guess they were just making sure to get all the eels, which we've now seen pulled over 2 packs on top of Volzith here and cleave down for maximum, oh my god, nerf rogues damage coming up as we see Yoda rocket up to almost over 500k DPS. Eels get deleted immediately, and Volzith will soon be starting his first transition. We've not seen a single team so far of the 4 teams that have attempted to one-phase this boss after transition be successful. successful at doing it. The lowest we've seen is 4%. Yesterday, the Method teams got 9%, I believe, or one of the Method teams got 9%, so I just don't know if it's doable.
Yeah, maybe
even though they have so much gear. We'll have to see if they can commit to it. You know, you have to have all of the stars aligned here. You probably need a staff. You need everybody to have their undulating tides not procced if they're running that Azerite trade. So we'll see if it works out here for Method NA. But 40K is doing the same pull right now as they spread out for Quaking and have pulled the boss. They got to get a move on, though. I mean, they got that 5-second buffer because of Method NA's 3 deaths, but that's just not enough right now.
Yeah, definitely not. They need to do something to catch up here. This one phase I've been talking about, it might not be possible, right? The closest percentage we've seen is 4%, and it's still quite a bit on a tyrannical setting. So maybe not possible at all with the damage they have available to them. But we'll see what happens. Now, Method NA out of the intermission phase here. We'll see if they go straight to the boss. They don't deal with any trash in between. Immediately go and interrupt the boss, pop their Bloodlust to be able to nuke this. They're also pulling the trash on top. So that means they definitely know they're not going to be able to one-phase this, right? Because else they wouldn't be pulling the trash. But this is still a huge pull, especially if you can see this AoE coming out. Now, okay, they did manage to get the interrupts off. Okay. There we go. This is interesting because why would you do that? Like the boss pulling the boss on top means those denizens are just standing inside. Now you see the rogues Shakib just having to run in there to get the interrupt off, and now they finally move. So now they're finally out of the zone.
I mean, they're just trying to do it for max efficiency here, right? To cleave the boss with the ads as opposed to separating it, but it's just so dangerous. They're not even close to getting the boss quite low for that transition phase. They have ads running everywhere right now. I believe the trash is still alive. The trash is actually reset. This is not looking good for Method NA here. High hit risk, high reward, but it just did not pay off. So all of the trash damage they did is gone. They lost a ton of damage on the boss trying to interrupt the trash, DPS the trash down. Didn't work out for them. And now they have to make sure they survive probably a 3rd transition phase. They even committed their Bloodlust to this, and it still didn't work out for them. Something that 40K has now done on their side, committing their Bloodlust.
I believe it was just a mistake to have to pool spawn there. I mean, it's okay to pull the trash, but if you pull the boss on top of the trash and then have to spool the pool spawn there, even with the increased range of outlaw rogues, they were not able to reach them. So that was definitely a mistake by the boss positioning, having this pool there. So this might actually cause Method NA to lose because they have this whole trash reset, which they need to get the 100% trash percentage. Well, 40K used their Bloodlust as well. They're probably not going to be able to one-phase it, so they are going to get another transition as well. But if they manage to be faster with the trash, then 40K are the ones that are going to win.
Very windy day here today in the studio, of course, as we move over out of Volzith's area and start to clear down. 23% for Method NA, who's done their 2nd transition. If they get a 3rd transition here, it's going to be oopsie daisies. So hopefully they manage to get past that. But no, that's not the cast. Okay, so it's going to be close. Actually, it's going to be really close. They don't have Bloodlust for it or anything. I don't know what kind of cooldowns have lined up for it. They have adrenaline rushes on the rogues, but those have already been used. So hopefully they manage to get it off. As Volzith is now 12% for 40K. So once again, another team has not managed to one-phase it, but they managed to. Oh, that was close. So Volzith does get killed for Method NA, who now grabs the eels on top of the pack that they had earlier. 40K does need to deal with the rest of the transition, but I think they've already killed their trash. They're at 94% right now, so yeah, they have. It's going to be close. I think Method NA will still be able to grab this, but that was a close call there.
Yeah, that was definitely a big mistake by Method NA. If it would have been any closer, then 40K would have gotten the lead here. But at this point, 40K still has to finish off the boss, and they still have to do 6%. As we see, Wolf Disco just grabbing those eels, tricksing it to Rentari. Rentari dropping really low. So Method NA only has to finish this off. They still need 2%, so this might still be close, as 40K probably only has to finish off those eels.
So Method NA, a bit miscalculation here right now, and 40K trying to capitalize on this opportunity. I don't think they've pulled their eel pack just yet either. Loaf is proccing cheat death. Method NA doing whatever they can to desperately cleave these eel down. And there's a 5-second difference between the two teams right now. Method NA is finished, but 5 seconds on the clock for 40K. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to pull it off here right now. And it looks like they're just a moment too slow as the timer does run out for the
are in Tol Dagor here. Now, we've seen Pain for Fam already play this dungeon before. They won against 40K actually, but 40K had this huge wipe on the 3rd boss. So, you know, you can't really say that Pain for Fam was playing that much better because they got their win basically handed to them. So we'll see what No Girls Allowed does here because we haven't seen them in this dungeon yet.
Yeah, and this is the first time I think we've seen this dungeon where we see teams actually doing similar strategies at the start, pulling a lot of these crabs into the boss with Bloodlust. It looks like Pain for Femme maybe has a little bit more, because they have 2 crab packs versus the 1 for No Girls Allowed, so they're going to get a little more trash percentage. They're probably, well, they're also getting about the same boss damage too, so I can't say they're doing less boss damage because of it either. They're just getting a lot of Blade Flurry cleave in. But, I mean, one of the ones that I wanted to say coming into this is, like, you mentioned that 40K kind of threw that map against Pain for Femme, and one of the things we keep talking about moving forward in this tournament, it's been a very weird trend all weekend, is that every single time teams pull trash into bosses, it doesn't seem to go very well for them. I feel like we had the first...
It'll going down. Oh. I think that's going to be a wipe.
That's a reset. I mean, they have to reset the boss. They're not going to kill this boss without a healer. That's a full-on wipe for No Girls Allowed right off the bat. And, I mean, maybe they can try to bleed this out. It is fortified. They might be able to kill the boss, but it's going to take them a lot more time, and it's going to be a lot less safe for them.
They also don't have the Soothe anymore, right? Because the Sand Queen actually gets an Enrage buff that stacks up once those drones die around the boss. So usually you have the rest to do, just dispel it before a Sandstorm, so the Sandstorm does less damage, or before the Upheaval, so the Upheaval does less damage. But now you don't actually have the Soothe anymore. So it seems like they are trying to commit. And with the Rogues having the cloaks available for the Sandstorm, it should be alright. But we see none of the Rogues actually have their cloak ready. So we'll see how it goes for No Girls Allowed. The boss is dropping really fast, so maybe they're going to be able to finish this off. But Edelweiss, I believe she went down because there were just so many bursting stacks because they pulled some of the trash on top of the boss here, and they did not manage to control their damage properly, and Edelweiss just going down with all the bursting stacks on top of having the boss damage as well. One more Sandstorm. They seem pretty healthy. The Rogues, of course, having so much utility and defensives that they should be able to finish it off, and the Upheaval, of course, also can be dodged by Rogues with the Shadow Melt or the Vanish or the Shadow Step. You know, they have lots of things to dodge it, so they should be fine here to finish it up.
Okay, yeah, might have called that wipe a little bit early, but yeah, they do have 1 extra death on the board, and they are 6% trash percentage behind, so it's not like that, you know, her dying there did them any favors, unfortunately, but, you know, props to them for actually being able to pull that off. Like you mentioned, they had none of their cloaks available, so any of those debuffs from the bugs got out of control. I don't remember what they're called. They're the ads on the fight. They would have been in pretty big trouble, but they're able to get through it and move on quickly. And both teams are pretty much at the same point of the dungeon because of that, with just, like we mentioned, slight advantage for Pain for Femme.
Yeah, so one more difference between Pain for Femme and No Girls Allowed. I mean, they're running the same setup, of course. We see 6 Rogues here. Wow, a lot of Rogues. But the difference between them is that Pain for Femme is actually running Dwarves. So all 3 Rogues are running Dwarf for Pain for Femme, while No Girls Allowed is running Night Elves on the Rogues as well. So they have 2 resets. They have Shadow Melt and they have the Vanish available to them, which is pretty good for Tol Dagor just because there's so many skips that you have to do, and you also want to open those cages on the side to get the buffs, and if you don't have Shadow Melt or Vanish available to you, then you're just going to be in combat with the mobs that are around there. So having this double safety net of getting out of combat might be something that No Girls Allowed chose to run, while Pain for Femme is going for more damage, as Femme actually goes down on one of those big pulls here. They do get their battle rest on Femme immediately, but they have to be careful here because these mobs actually do a lot of damage.
Yeah, and of course with all of them at the same HP, they're going to get 5 stacks of bursting here, and that's going to be a lot of damage on the group. I don't think anyone will go down, but they're going to get incredibly low. Fortunately, not proccing cheat death on any of the Rogues, so they still have all of those available. That's just a little dangerous moment there, and now they don't have their battle res available, and No Girls Allowed still has theirs available, so they have that little advantage now. So teams are kind of neck and neck in terms of what advantage they have over the other team right now.
Yeah, and at this point, I mean, might as well just leave the healer somewhere behind, because we've seen that you don't actually need a healer at all if you have 3 Rogues available to you. So Edelweiss just, you know, being a cat for doing some damage, because the Rogues, they're fine to stay alive. Pain for Femme, as you said, no battle rest available to them. And we talked about these C speakers before. Now, if you're a Horde and you have the Mass Dispel, the offensive dispel from the Blood Elf racial, then if a dome goes through, you can just use the Blood Elf racial, get rid of them immediately. It is an absorb shield that gets applied to all the mobs around it. But since they're both playing Alliance for No Girls Allowed and Pain for Femme, they don't have this Massive Spell available to them, and therefore they need to make sure they interrupt all those watery domes, else they're gonna have to damage through the shields, which just costs you so much time.
And we are seeing a little bit of a differing strategy here from the teams. No Girls Allowed opting to do a little bit more trash early on than Pain for Femme, so they might be doing a little bit less with the cannons. They're also opting to unlock all of the doors on this floor as well, so they get a little bit of extra mob count. Also, during the boss, the boss won't be able to free those prisoners during the boss encounter either, so the boss will be a little bit easier for them too. So a little bit interesting differing strategy there.
Yeah, we see Meva actually using that tranquility here on this trash pack to be able to heal the bursting stacks away, and you also see the emissary being avoided, just line of sighting around the corner. And one thing we didn't mention yet is the explosive, right? Now, rogues are usually very good at dealing with explosive, but Meva actually not line of sighting them, and they already pulled the boss. This is a huge problem. They need to reset this boss. I don't think they can... Yeah, and Fam actually going down too. That was a huge mistake by their Rasta Druid here. We talked about the emissary being there, the void, that's constantly casting this AoE. And we also saw some explosives spawning around the corner. Mevo did not line of sight properly, maybe because he was a little bit too late compared to the rest of the team, and just going down. And with them not having anyone who can rest him, and also not even having a battle rest available at all, they have to have a complete wipe and a reset, and they need to go again. This is going to cost them so much time.
I mean, that just seems like it was a little hiccup. Like, we haven't seen that many mistakes from Mewa throughout this tournament. That's just like, I mean, I don't know, it's not early for them over there. It's like 6 p.m., so I'm not sure what the problem is. That's I just forgot where they were in the dungeon at that point. I mean, part of the problem with Tol Dagor is it's such a small space. It feels like there's very little room to move around. So sometimes you forget that you can just move around the corner to line of sight most of these mechanics. You know, fortunately, because, you know, this is a vertical dungeon, it's not that big, you can pretty much res from anywhere, so they're not going to have that much of an issue getting back into it. I'm not quite sure what he's doing right now, and start casting res, buddy. But the only way you can reset that boss is if you run all the way around the side and pull the boss out the door. That's the only way they could have possibly gotten a reset, and like you mentioned, the Void Emissary was in the way of that. He tried resetting it. He's like, okay, I have to run all the way around, but he couldn't do it there. So they're going to be sitting there waiting. No Girls Alloud's moving on and clearing a lot more trash than Pain for Femme was here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it might be a problem with Mabo not being able to skip past the trash here. Maybe he's waiting for his Shadow Melt CD to come off or something like that. But Pain for Femme definitely losing an insane amount of time here while No Girls Allowed already on their way. No Girls Allowed actually got a Watery Dome off here, so they didn't get the interrupt. So they have to like wait for it to drop off. But they're on their way to also engage Jess Halvis now. So No Girls Allowed having 50% trash to their name, and they also are fighting Jess Hallis at the same time. Now, on this 45 setting, Jess Hallis should not be a huge problem, but we've seen some teams struggle in the second phase when you have Bobby available as well, and then Bobby have casting those spells that needs to be, those abilities that need to be interrupted as well. If you don't interrupt all of them, then if you get a fear through and you get the claws as well, then we can definitely see something happen, because it's still one shots you on 45, right? So if you don't interrupt, then no matter if it's tyrannical or 45, you're still gonna die.
Hey Jess, I believe they already released all those prisoners, man. That's not going to do much. You have to stop opening those doors. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this boss a lot. We see a lot of teams actually wiping to this boss. The last cup, where they had problems with explosive once all those prisoners were released, maybe that was why they decided to open those cages beforehand, so they didn't have any problems with explosives on this boss, because that's really the only thing that's going to wipe you. Now, of course, both Jess and Bobby have 2 casts each that you have to interrupt, and it's kind of difficult to deal with if you don't have the right comp, but fortunately for them, they do have 4 melee interrupts, so they should be able to get all the kicks. The main ones being those Howling Fears that will fear the entire group if they get off, so making sure they're getting those interrupts should be totally fine on this boss. And of course, like I mentioned yesterday, you know, the real champion is whoever does the most damage to Bobby.
I think he just casting Curse Pain for Femme. You said the interrupts shouldn't be a problem, and Pain for Femme had a fear going off on the whole group. Now, the problem is Shelley is dead, right? Shelley died on the very full. They don't have a battle rest available, so maybe they were short on interrupts or something like that, but a whole fear on the whole group went through. Fortunately for them, there were no Jagged Claws cast by Jess Howley, so they did not have a full team wipe going out, but they're still struggling a lot here. I'm not sure if they have mentality problems, if, you know, this wipe caused them to just, you know, tilt a little bit, play slower, but, you know, with one player that this fight is gonna take them a lot longer, so they're struggling here. Well, No Girls Allowed, they're down with Jess Howlis at this point, and they're on the way to the cannon part. Now, one more thing I want to mention is that Pain for Femme actually changed up their strategy quite a bit to yesterday, because yesterday they were playing a lot of trash with the cannons compared to 40 K that they were playing against. And I was questioning that strategy a little bit, because it seemed like the setup time for the cannon part just seemed way too long for the percentage that they're gaining from it. So maybe Pain for Femme agreed, and they're actually changing up their strategy to get a little bit more trash beforehand. But it seems like they are not very well practiced with this strategy, and therefore they're having these swipes and these problems.
Yeah, you know, That was definitely a very weird wipe from them, considering how well they've played this tournament so far. So hopefully it's not something that weighs on their mind too hard. This is a 3-game series, so they can definitely come back in games 2 and 3 if they were to lose this map, which it looks like they're going to be doing right now, as long as everything plays out clean from this point. Had a little bit of a hiccup there from No Girls Allowed, where it looked like they were trying to skip that the 2 mobs on that top floor there. They were sitting by the door all stealth, like waiting to go by, and then they turned around and killed the 2 mobs because they realized they were in combat with them. Definitely not what you want to be doing there, but they probably realize that they are ahead right now, and they decided to play it safe and kill those 2 off before they moved on to the cannon section of the dungeon.
Yeah, and we also see a setup here happening for No Girls Allowed for this cannon part. One thing to note that they are already on 61%, so they don't need to do as much trash as we've seen Pain for Fam, for example, do yesterday. Pain for Fam were doing this whole setup where they would wait a little bit, they would gather a lot of trash from inside the area too until they use the cannons, because as we know, the cannons only have 5 charges now compared to the spring season where they had unlimited charges. So you definitely cannot kill as much trash anymore with the cannons as you used to. And so most of the teams are choosing to just kill a lot more trash inside the area before getting to that cannon part, just because this whole setup time takes way too long. Now we see some of the bursting go off for No Girls Allowed, but not a problem for Edelweiss to heal it up.
All right, melee players that use axes, I'm gonna teach you something fun here. The new Diver's Folly axe that drops in the raid from Blackwater Behemoth, it has a little proc on it. It has a chance to proc, and it saves up a percentage of your damage and then releases it at the end of the proc. Something fun about this dungeon is if you have that weapon proc in this dungeon, and then you hop into the cannon and you shoot the cannon, that counts as part of that proc. Then you can then leave the cannon and explode the proc on top of all this trash. It works similar to the way Soul Capacitor used to work back in Hellfire Citadel, if you remember that trinket from back in the day. So a little bit of extra damage there. I'm not sure if they're actually playing around that, like if they're going in and they're AoEing trash until one of the rogues gets the proc and then they hop in the cannon. That could be like a little extra min-maxy thing, but just a little bit of extra information for something interesting about this dungeon.
I liked it a lot. That seems very smart. I hope one of those teams pulls it off and we can actually see it here. Now, Pain for Fam, they did manage to finish up Just Howless. Shallow did manage to release and get back up. Actually, it seems like they used a battle rest because it got back up there. So they definitely are out of battle rests again. So Pain for Fam have to be very careful here. I mean, even if they manage to catch up time-wise, I mean, there's a 9 death difference, which is 45 seconds. So an insane amount of time to come past for Pain for Fam here. While No Girls Allowed having a lot cleaner run compared to them. Only 1 death so far, which was of course Edelweiss that died on the very first boss, which could have been a disaster really. So No Girls Allowed recovering really well from this very early hiccup they had on the first boss, and good on them for being able to finish the boss without a healer at all.
Yeah, and of course this is an interesting part of the dungeon as well, because they don't actually need any mob count. They don't really need to pull these, so we see them actually completely skipping all that trash. They're probably going to try to Shadow Meld it off here as well. They only need 9% more trash, and as we know, all the trash near the last cannon should be enough to finish that off. It almost seems like they kind of over-pulled trash, but that being said, we have seen teams only use the cannon on the front pack here, near the second cannon, and they either tried to cleave the rest of it down with the boss, or they used their 2 remaining cannon shots and then like finished it off with AoE, both of which are just inefficient. So an interesting like variation on strategy from No Girls Allowed, just opting to completely skip it there.
Yeah, interesting. And they also still have their Bloodlust available, which I assume at this point they're going to save for the last boss, Korgus. Now again, on a fortified setting, and the last boss should not be a huge problem, but it can still cause trouble with the RNG involved, because those bursting stacks can be doubled. So if you're a little bit unlucky in the boss cast a couple of doubles in a row, it's just going to be so much damage on the group, and therefore just playing it a little bit safer and having this Bloodlust for the last boss is probably what No Girls Allowed chooses to do. And bursting an explosive not going to really affect the last boss either. The explosives are not going to be a lot, so it's going to be easy to deal with, and bursting of course not going to be happening at all on the last boss, so no problems there.
Yep, and of course, I mean, we've talked about this boss a lot, Captain Valeri. It's pretty much I'm not going to curse them. Well, I'm going to curse them again. It's pretty much a figured-out boss. All the mechanics are cyclical. Everyone does pretty much the same thing. They wait for the Cinder Flame to go off. They move the barrel out of the way of the Cinder Flame. Then they have plenty of time to move the barrels around as they please to stack them up afterwards. They're just going to ignore them at this point because the boss is dead. But at that point, it all resets. You're able to redo all of the mechanics, and it's pretty much just a single target encounter. I think that's why we saw 40 K opt to try to cleave trash down with it, because there's really not that much going on there.
Yeah, that's actually what Pain for Fam is doing right now. So they it seems like they like the strategy that Fourty K was doing yesterday, even though Fourty K did end up wiping on Captain Valeri, but it was a mistake that definitely can be solved, right? It was just the barrels not being carried around properly by Fourty K. So Pain for Fam definitely liked what they've seen from Fourty K and just choosing to copy that strategy, basically pulling the last trash back here on top of Valeri. They do not use their Bloodlust here, which I believe if you're gonna pull trash on top of Valeri, I feel like it's very efficient to use the Bloodlust there, in my opinion. So I like that more that 40k did yesterday, because again, Korgus should not be a huge issue at all, and it's a single target Bloodlust that you're using. So I feel like, in my personal opinion, it should be more efficient to use it here. But Pain for Fam just playing it safer and save it for the last boss. But at this point, can it really play safe?
I mean, we're at the point in this dungeon where we pretty much say all eyes are on the healer, all eyes are on Edelweiss. All she has to do is make sure she doesn't go down here, and they should have this boss. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of teams in previous cups just have problems on this boss, especially the healers. This is a difficult boss to heal. There's a lot going on for them here. But that being said, it's a fortified, it's not tyrannical. They have Bloodlust. They'll be able to burn this boss down very quickly. So hopefully we shouldn't see any wipes coming out from them here.
We actually see a little bit a difference here in strategy from where Trell is standing, the tank is standing. Now, most of the time we see the tank actually stand on the stairs, but if you stand on the stairs, your vision is actually very impaired and you can barely see anything as a tank. We've seen some tanks actually get hit by the ignition just because it's so hard to see as a tank, because your camera is covered by this building that is there in the back. So maybe that's why No Girls Allowed actually chooses to have Trell stand in a different position, just so he gets better vision on the room. Now you see those bursting stacks go out. Now one thing that is good to note about having those triple rogues is you actually have those cloaks available to you in case you get doubles, right? So you can just relieve the healer just using that cloak to not get any damage, and then Edelweiss only has to worry about herself, which is very good as a healer. You all know if you only have to heal one person, which is yourself, especially as a Raster Druid, you do have a lot more self-healing if you play with this Life Bloom talent, and you're just going to roll your Life Bloom on yourself all the time. So definitely helpful to have those rogues on this boss.
Yeah, unfortunately for them, they haven't had a single double yet, and it looks like they're not going to get one as the boss decides to cast Cross Ignition instead of changing to the other Azerite rounds. So they will not be getting any doubles on this boss, which means Edelweiss has a easy time pumping out 18k single target, which is pretty reasonable, a little lower than some other healers. We've seen some do 22, 23k, but
with the mini boss at the very end, on top of some trash as well. So definitely huge pulls that we've seen before. Now let's see what Pain for Fam and No Girls Allowed to have for us here.
Yeah, something Settles touched on a little bit after the previous King's Rest we saw is that we swapped this entire King's Rest from Tyrannical to Fortified, which vastly changes kind of the flow of the dungeon. We saw a lot of teams focusing on just pulling as much trash as possible together because it was not that empowered. And I mean, okay, it's Fortified now, trash does more damage. Tank instantly goes down with Bloodlust. It just shows you right there what the changes. It's kind of crazy. Them showing off what I was talking about right away. That's not really what you want to see at the start of the dungeon, but I appreciate them helping me out with the explanation a little bit.
That was definitely a very difficult pull by Pain for Fam, but No Girls Allowed seem to be doing the exact same thing, though. They are also pulling those two Guardians on top of having the Emissary. So what their plan is here is basically you want to pull everything and just do not line up side the Void Emissary. You want to just tank through the Void Emissary, have it like use defensives and out heal it and nuke it down before you die to the AoE cast. And that's why Pain for Fam probably used the Bloodlust to be able to go through it. But Fam just either not using enough defensives or something else happened. But huge mistake again by Pain for Fam at the very start of the dungeon. I really hope that this Tol Dagor didn't affect their mentality too much and they can keep on going here.
Well, I wonder if that's kind of a change based off of what they know the times in the dungeon are going to be. Because we saw earlier that, a good King's Rest time on Fortified, well, we don't know if it was necessarily good yet, but we saw in our run earlier today that their King's Rest time was about 23 minutes, which is about 2 minutes faster than the tyrannical times we saw in the previous cup. So maybe that's just kind of a change they made so that they can make sure and guarantee to get 3 Bloodlusts in instead of just 2, just for timing purposes. But we see No Girls Allowed also using their Bloodlust right at the start of the dungeon in a pretty big pull, not quite all 4 packs, but they're pulling 3 of the packs at the start of the dungeon here.
Is it actually? Oh yeah, they're pulling 3 packs, or is it just 2?
I believe it's 3. There's one in the corner that they haven't pulled, and that's it.
Okay.
Oh, so no, okay, they left 2 of the mobs as well. So they're splitting it in half, but this is still the 2 bigger packs.
It's definitely a huge pull if you think about Fortified, just because of those Witch Doctors, right? We've seen the teams before struggle on these packs as well, just because if you have 2 Witch Doctors in a pull, then you do not have enough interrupts to get rid of all the Deathly Chills. And the Deathly Chills just do so much damage to your tank, especially on Fortified. So once you run out of interrupts, you need to have a perfect rotation with your defensives as a tank, and also use your spell reflect properly to be able to not die to the Deathly Chill. And then on top of that, you also have the Shadow Bolt Volley. So you need to make sure that at least one of your interrupts is ready for the Shadow Bolt Volley, because the Deathly Chill might not wipe you immediately, because the tank might survive some of those casts going through. But if you have a Shadow Bolt Volley go through, then you're in like a lot bigger trouble than if a Deathly Chill goes through. So you definitely want to make sure that you have your interrupts timed properly.
It's important to mention that this King's Rest is Tides heavy, so we have more of those emissaries of the Tides in this dungeon than any other of the emissaries. And the problem with those Tides emissaries in these packs is that they make it so you can't CC any of the mobs, which means you can't get interrupts. So that Witch Doctor would be popping off with those Deathly Chill casts on the tank. And as we know, warriors don't mitigate magic damage very well. Fortunately, they had the rogue go over and sap it at the start, keep it out of combat, so that it's just sitting there in the corner while they deal with this trash pretty easily.
Yeah, Pain for Fam doing similar pulls here, where also you see the emissary being rooted here in the back to be able to avoid it. Basically, we see Nevo just constantly casting those entangling roots on top of this emissary. And again, having these Witch Doctors are the biggest problem in this group, as No Girls Allowed actually dropping really low. Dilemma proccing the cheat dap here and the bursting on top, so definitely having a little bit of trouble, but they managed to finish it off. And at this point, they are going to be fighting their first boss here. Now we saw Nerve actually dying earlier for Method NA when they did this exact same pull, where they pulled the Guardians on top of the Golden Serpent. So we'll see if No Girls Allowed is doing better here and actually keeps their tank alive.
And I believe our resident tank here, Sloot, mentioned that these suppression slams from the Guardians were changed in 8.2 to only target the tank. They don't target random directions now. So as long as Trell is making sure he doesn't target the rest of the group with those frontals, they should be totally fine on this pull. So that's one of the biggest problems with those. That's why teams weren't doing this before. In addition to it also being tyrannical, this is just kind of the new strategy. You don't want to stack more fortified trash on top of the already difficult gauntlet room, which is where they were doing that before.
Yeah, I like this a lot more. It seemed like Method NA definitely saved some time by doing this strategy, in opposed to what 40K did with the old strategy and pulling the Guardians into the gauntlet. Now, Pain for Fam actually caught up quite a bit, considering that they had almost a full team wipe at the start. Of course, they only had 2 deaths, but it was the tank and the healer, so they had to have a full reset. The rogues did manage to de-aggro with probably Vanish to get off, but still, Pain for Fam only 5% boss HP behind, and on a fortified setting, that's not a huge difference. Now, of course, No Girls Allowed also has those Guardians, which Pain for Fam just did not pull on top of the boss, so they will have to deal with them later on into the gauntlet, as 40K did as well.
And just like what happened with Method NA, Troll did end up going down to the Guardians when they were about 10% HP there. They did instantly pop the battle res out for him, so it's not that big of a deal. They just don't have that for another 4 minutes or so. But I mean, that's kind of I think that's an okay trade-off, right? If you're not planning another battle reses, but there you go, right there, one rogue going down, probably to the dot. I mean, there's not much else to go down to on the fight.
I think it was the AOE that both Dilemma and Sistara got hit by.
That's just laziness. That's not what you want to see out of any of these DPS players. That's big DPS brain coming out from them there.
Unless they actually wanted to calculate it to increase their damage, to just take it, but then he got hit by something else on top of it and they died? Not sure.
Yeah, fortunately, the boss is at 20%, so they only have to do 2 DPS damage for the rest of the boss's HP. This would be really bad if they did it like 80%, but 20%, I think being able to cleave the constructs on top of the boss offsets the deaths, so they're not really going to fall too far behind because of that. They'll fall behind in terms of where they are in the dungeon, but because they got that extra trash percentage out, they're going to be pretty much neck and neck with Pain for Fam at this point.
Yeah, and both of the teams now on 2 deaths. It seems like No Girls Allowed actually taking quite a while to finish up this boss here, though. So we'll see later on, once Pain for Fam is pulling those Guardians through, as you can see right now on the left screen. Mabel went back pulling those Guardians, so we'll see how Pain for Fam deals with that. And I've talked about this in the earlier King's Rest. I do believe that pulling the Guardians on top of this gauntlet on Fortified is actually very difficult, because you have those named mobs like the King Adal and so on that does so much tank damage, on top of also having very difficult mechanics to deal with, that it might be a problem. And if you make any sort of mistakes as a tank, or you don't interrupt one of those abilities from the next trash pack, then you can definitely have a full team wipe or have the tank go down.
Yeah, we'll have to see if them pulling the constructs into this fortified room here is actually going to slow them down more than it did for No Girls Allowed on the boss. Because like you mentioned, they're not going to be able to just fully focus down any of these trash packs because they have the Guardians here. This is more the tyrannical strategy. It makes sense to do it in tyrannical because this trash room, this gauntlet room, doesn't really do as much. But you got to remember, Fortified, I believe it's 40% more damage, 20% more HP, or is it the other way around? It's something like that. It's at least 20% more, and one of them is a little bit more. But it's a lot more damage and health on these mobs in Fortified. And this room is a lot more dangerous on Fortified.
Yeah, it most definitely is. And you can see, especially this gauntlet here, this trash group on the bottom left. Now, one thing to note as well is that this gauntlet is actually RNG on which group gets activated each time. But on a tournament realm, we do have a stat rotation. It starts with the top left and then goes counterclockwise. So it will always be the same trash group that you are fighting while also having those guardians. But it is this very difficult guard captain Alo that constantly casts this X barrage that needs to be interrupted or line of sighted. And then we have King Rahu here that casts this lightning AoE that you've just seen that needs to be interrupted by either a Ring of Peace or a Typhoon. But none of these groups actually running the Windwalker, which by the way is very interesting because Pain for Femme does have a Windwalker main, Ricky. He's actually main Windwalker for a very long time, so not seeing the Windwalker here is weird because we've seen Method NA and both 40K run a Windwalker in this dungeon, but these teams seem to not value the Windwalker here at all.
And props to Pain for Femwords too. They managed to take the constructs down with little to no problem whatsoever. I felt that it would have slowed them down in this room a little bit more than it did, but they have the same deaths, they have the same mob count, and they're at half HP on this particular set of Guardians where No Girls Allowed just pulled them, so they're pretty firmly ahead. I mean, it's not that big of an advantage, maybe 15-20 seconds, but they are ahead.
Yeah, definitely. And this time around in King's Rest, I think King's Rest is a very straightforward dungeon where there's not that many variations in strategy that you can do. So at the end of the spring season, we've seen almost all of the teams do the exact same thing with very, very slight variations between strategies. So it was really just whoever is more efficient in damage and whoever makes less mistakes is going to win. But we've seen the King's Rest before between Method NA and 40K, and they had a lot of differences in strategies there because this time around, of course, we have the different mob count, which was changed, and we also have Fortified instead of Tyrannical. So on the bridge later on in this dungeon, we've seen Method NA be way faster compared to 40K. So anything can still happen here in this dungeon, even though No Girls Allowed is very slightly behind. They have lots of time to catch up later on in this dungeon still.
Yeah, it's really interesting talking about the dynamic between Tyrannical and Fortified in this dungeon because I think everyone kind of has the same opinion of King's Rest, where it's by far the most not mechanically difficult dungeon, but numbers-wise, it's one of the most difficult dungeons in BFA. And on Tyrannical, every single boss is a huge chunk of HP to get through. All the mechanics are incredibly dangerous. But on Fortified, all of the trash becomes incredibly dangerous, especially that bridge section. I mean, the bridge section is definitely going to make or break this dungeon. Everything up to the bridge is a lot easier than the bridge itself is, mainly because of those berserker mobs. But one of the big breakpoints we sometimes see as well is how teams pull this room. There are some teams that take this room a little bit more safe and they do the fluids in 2 packs at a time. But there are most teams that are fast in this dungeon are doing what Pain for Femme does right now, where they pull all of them at the exact same time and cleave everything down.
Yeah, one advantage here by having a triple rogue instead of having double rogue plus Windwalker is that you can have all the rogues stay while Mevo and the tank probably just going to run away here, but all the rogues, they can stay and finish off the mobs because they can just cloak away the bursting, right? As we can see right here for Pain for Femme, both Femme and Mevo just running away. They don't want to have anything to do with this bursting because the amount of fluids that are there would definitely make sure that Femme and Mevo would die. There's no amount of defensives you can use to survive those kind of stacks unless you have an immunity, of course, like the rogues do.
Yeah, both teams pulling that strat off exactly the same way, and then of course the other strategy we see here with the 2 internment constructs is that they'll pull them on top of each other on the same side of the room, but albeit a little bit pulled at different times so that the entombs don't go off at the same time, so they can just click the same sarcophagus to get people out at the same time, or right after each other, not at the same time. Another strategy going very well for them, and it looks like both teams also have 1 extra mob in there. Pain for Femme have one of the fluids that they missed, and No Girls Allowed have the other Tides emissary that they missed.
Yeah, so they're going to be very, very even percentage-wise and also time-wise. I mean, look at the HP of those constructs. Both of those teams so close to one another, the exact same amount of deaths as well, and they both have their Bloodlust available right now. So we'll see what they do with their Bloodlust. 40K and Method NA had different strategies when it came to their Bloodlust usage, so we'll see what those kind of teams do. I don't think they're gonna use it for this boss now, which is something we've seen in the spring season. But in the spring season, we also had Tyrannical, so then it was more efficient to use. No Girls Allowed actually pulling one more construct here, which I believe is a bridge construct that they got here. I'm not sure if it was a mistake that they didn't get out of combat with, or if it was on purpose.
No, I mean, there's no way you can get in combat with that. They used Shroud to get past it. They should have been totally fine. They even distracted to the side. I watched them do it. This is new. This might be something that they pull so they don't have to deal with one of the Berserker packs on the bridge, which would be a pretty interesting strategy from them, because whenever we see trash whips in this dungeon, it's almost always to those Spectral Berserkers. That bleed that they put on anyone they're close to after the jump is a ridiculous amount of damage, and if you're not Dwarf or if you don't have some way to remove it, you're going to take almost your whole HP, and on top of that, they just pull it with the boss. It is fortified, but like you mentioned, we see a difference in Bloodlust usage. Pain for Femme opting to use hers on the Embalmer himself, and No Girls Allowed looks like they're saving it for one of those Berserker pulls, even though they have the extra trash percentage.
Yeah, so Pain for Femme probably heard me, and they popped their Bloodlust just so I'm wrong, because I basically said they're not going to be using it for this boss because it is 45. It really does seem like not a very good usage, though, in my opinion, because I mean, it is fortified, and we talk about this bridge trash and how difficult it is with the Berserkers, with the Beastmasters, with so many casters that need to be interrupted. So having the Bloodlust makes the bridge part just so much easier. We're also having the mini-boss at the very end of the dungeon, which also is very difficult to deal with, which we've seen Method and A save their Bloodlust for. So just using this Bloodlust on Machimba seems like a weird strategy. Maybe they think they're gonna get one more Bloodlust out at the very end, so that's probably what they're thinking. But No Girls Allowed definitely saving their Bloodlust, probably for the trash on the bridge later.
Yeah, based off of the timing of the dungeon we saw earlier, Pain for Femme should get one more Bloodlust off. It'll be during the final boss, King Dazar, but I mean, that's not really an efficient use of Bloodlust in this dungeon, so I'm not sure why that matters to them too much. I mean, getting 2 Bloodlusts off on a single target versus 1 Bloodlust off for a very difficult AoE trash pack, I'd rather take the AoE trash pack, especially in King's Rest. We do see them shrouding past the first Berserker pack, which is like something you never really want to do at this point, especially on Fortified. They also go past the second trash pack as well, and I don't know if they're trying to get past the Brute too, just for a third one. Looks like they're pulling this pack. That's fine. The really difficult mob to look out here for is that Beastmaster. It'll do a large frontal AoE ability. If it hits anyone, it's just a nasty nature out of them. And Miro goes down, which is not what you want to see, because they don't have a battle race. He has to run all the way back from the start of the dungeon. There's no checkpoints in this dungeon until you kill the third boss.
Yeah, and they didn't kill the bridge construct, which is something that No Girls Allowed did. Pain for Femme not killing the bridge construct, that means that at the start of the dungeon you can talk to an NPC that will teleport you to that bridge area where the bridge construct usually is. But since they didn't kill it, it did not actually get unlocked, and therefore Mabel has to walk all the way down there. Now, Rastaries do have some ability with dash in cat form, but he can't go in travel form inside King's Rest at all, so it's still going to take him a while to get back. Now, Pain for Femme obviously do have to deal with this Brute, and a Brute should not be causing a lot of trouble as long as you don't get by the AoE, but it's going to cost him quite a while for Mayweather to come back here.
Now, this is really confusing out of No Girls Allowed. They had the extra trash percentage, but they didn't opt to skip this Berserker pack. They're going to have to skip something at this point, right? Because you have to think about further on in the dungeon. They have the guaranteed 4% trash count from Shadow of Zul, which is right before the final boss, which is a mandatory mini boss in order to open that final gate. So they only have 13% more trash percentage they're going to get, and they're sitting on their Bloodlust. So either they're gearing up for a big pull for the rest of the trash percentage here, or we're going to see something small, but another double pull on top of the Emissary of the Tides here. Popping their Bloodlust isn't going to be a big pull for them.
Okay, so I assume that No Girls Allowed is just going to kill up this trash, and then they're done. They're probably just going to skip the whole bridge area, which is not such a bad idea in my opinion, just because the bridge is so difficult and there's so many things that can go wrong. We saw Fourty K struggle so much with the bridge area as well, also having these emissaries in the bridge too. But popping that Bloodlust, you see the Healing Tide spawn in the corner, so it's not a problem here. They don't have to kill it off. They can just drag the mobs away. With Dilemma dropping very low, getting that Frost Shock on him, but he used that Cloak just to be safe here. Now, the Brute is the one with the most HP here, but it's not actually the most difficult mob. It's really the Beastmaster that they have to be careful about, especially because of the Dead Eye and this AoE cone with the Poison debuff. Now, on top of the Brute, with having this huge area of denial, having the Beastmaster cast all those frontals can cause problems, but No Girls Allowed seem to be dealing with it pretty well.
Question is, does this get them to 96%? I think it should. It'll get them very close if not. And then, like you mentioned, they can just skip everything. Go to the boss, go boss, Shadow of Zul, boss. Yeah, it'll definitely get them to 96%. I like that. And on top of that, like you mentioned as well, I believe, the blind on the Beastmaster, which is kind of a nasty mob to deal with when you're aiming all that trash back on top of it. You don't want to have someone have to go out and make sure that they don't hit the entire group with that poison barrage. So keeping that blonde, as I like to say, definitely a smart play. We're going to see them skip these 2 berserkers as well. You don't want to deal with the berserkers is also them dealing with that first one makes total sense, and they're going to get to the boss way before Pain for Fem. Now I think Miwo going down also helped with that a little bit. I think they'd probably be getting here at the same time, even with the differing strategies. But I like the strategy from No Girls Allowed. This is pretty impressive from them.
Yeah, it looked really good, to be honest. I'm a little bit like the strategy that Pain for Fem is doing here. It seemed like they were doing the exact same percentage. They were on the same percentage for trash once No Girl Allowed did their Bloodlust pull, but then Pain for Fem just fell behind because they're doing those weird 2 kind of pulls to get their percentage here, and it definitely seems like they're going to go over percentage because they are 95% now. They still have this Witch Doctor and just Berserker here, so I'm not sure if they were miscalculating the percentage at all, but they're going to go over. So this seems like a very weird thing for Pain for Fem to do. Maybe they had to recalculate their strategy on the go or something like that, but something went wrong here as they go over percentage. Now No Girls Allowed already done with their first boss in this council fight, so again, this council fight got nerfed because the Severing Action Kula does less damage on a player now, but it's also a 45 setting, so it's just in general easier.
I mean, this was a total gauntlet of a boss before. This was something that took teams maybe 4 or 5 minutes to get through before, but nowadays on Fortified it should only take them 2.5 minutes to get through, and they don't have to commit that much to it. Like we mentioned, the biggest part of this boss was getting through that Kula just fine without losing any players or having to use too many defensive cooldowns. Of course, once you get through Kula, you don't have to deal with any more Severing Blades. The only thing to look for is that explosive totem on Xanazal, which is going to go off, it looks like. Yeah, it just goes off. It doesn't do that much damage on Fortified, I guess. So
and Cloak.
Joke's on me, I guess. Haha, dumb caster.
It actually did quite a bit of damage, but you saw all the rogues pop their cloak. Edelweiss used Iron Bark on herself, Bark Skin on herself, and went into bear form. Just basically, it was kind of a smart strategy. I like this by just basically making use of the rogue utility by not having to go there, wasting the damage into the explosive totem. Just use your defensives, right, and live through it. So very well done by No Girls Allowed here.
That's always a good strategy. Just live forehead. That's what I always say. They're on to the final boss, of course, Akal Ali here, and I'm interested to see if they're going to do the strategy where we saw Team D kind of implement where you vanish off all of the charges. Of course, they just eat the first one in the face, so they're not going to do that. Of course, the benefit to that would be your tank can stay in for the entire duration of debilitating backhand, which is a debuff that makes the tank take more damage from the boss while he has it. Of course, it's also blockable, so, you could just not get hit by it. Again, don't get hit forehead. And, and just stay in and deal damage. Looks like he did there because he didn't really worry about kiting the boss around, which is what we normally see here. Sistar opting to repost the charge through there as well, the barrel through, so no problems there as well. This boss, I mean, on Fortified, these bosses, pose a lot less of a threat than they used to.
Most definitely. We see Trell actually not blocking the debuff here in the back end. As you can see, the debuff displayed on the groove frames here. We also have, of course, a new addition on the groove frame, or below the groove frames, rather. You can see the defensive and the offensive cooldowns for each player here displayed, and you can see if it's being used or not. So that's definitely cool to see. You can keep an eye on that, keep an eye on when the healer is using Tranquility, for example, whenever the tank is using their defensives. Now, Pain for Fem on Xanazal, so they still have one more boss to go right after this. Now, they're on 100% trash, right? So, unfortunately, there's no way to skip the last mini-boss, so they're just going to be over. While No Girls Allowed, they have this 4%, which is the exact percentage that Shadow of Zul gives.
Yeah, and of course, it has to be said that sometimes on the tournament realm, for some reason, some unknown reason, Shadow of Zul sometimes doesn't give the percentage that he's supposed to, which is that 4%. All of the players have been made aware of this and have been made aware that it does count, even if it doesn't show up in the sidebar. So if that happens, you guys know that in Twitch chat now as well. But to talk about Shadow of Zul himself, he does a lot of tank damage, especially on Fortified. You see Troll getting absolutely chunked. Pro Warriors really don't have that much mitigation against shadow damage, and the cool thing, I mean, this is something new today, I believe, is that when we're zoned in on this Rested Druid, you can actually see their HOTS on the player frames in the top, which is a pretty new addition, pretty cool. You can see how much Edelweiss is actually just pumping into the tank here. He needs a lot of healing on this pack.
And you can see Edelweiss just using all the HOTS available to her just to increase the mastery healing. Of course, mastery of a Rested, the more HOTS you have on a target, the more healing you do to that target. Therefore, Edelweiss is using all those all those HOTS like the Fluorescence on the floor to get the Spring Blossoms, Rejuvenation, Regrowth, Life, and of course all the HOTS available to her just to get Trell, or to keep Trell alive. Also using all of the defense. You can see the Shield Wall on cooldown, Last Stand, Iron Bug, everything being used just to be able to survive this mini boss here.
And like we mentioned as well, they are at 100% trash count. They did finish off Shadow of Azul and get that percentage. So all they do need to do now is finish off King Dazar, and they're done with the dungeon. Pain for Fim still has to deal with Shadow of Azul. And they do have one slight advantage for them in that they have their Bloodlust coming off cooldown here, but I mean, they're so far behind. It would require a wipe from No Girls Allowed for them to come back in this dungeon right now.
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking was maybe Pain for Femme found out a way to skip this mini boss and still be able to access the last boss. That's the only thing I could have imagined for them to get the 100% before reaching this boss fight, right? Which of course there's no way, because there's a gate that you cannot access until the mini boss dies. But I figured maybe there's some smart mechanic that they figured out, but definitely not, as they're fighting Shadow of Azul right now, and they're just gonna go over percentage. You see the Llama actually dropping very low for No Girls Allowed, but they do have 2 battle rests available to them, so even if something goes wrong, they can still just get them back up.
Yeah, fortunately no cheat death proc from him there, so he'll have that one for the nastier second mob that comes here in a second. Yeah, I'm not really sure how they would be able to go past the gate. That probably requires some clever use of game mechanics out of them. But of course, the more dangerous section of the counter, probably the most dangerous section of the counter, is Tizala here, where Tizala will cast Deathly Roar, which fears everyone on the group for 4 seconds, and the rogues are able to cloak the first one so they can just DPS through it, but if that second one gets off, everyone will be feared, and they'll just kind of be sitting ducks for 4 seconds, hoping that they don't tick down to anything happening. For instance, you know, Rebon could jump on one of the rogues and just cleave him down while he's feared, and there's nothing you can really do to that. Fortunately, no bad lineup. They're able to kill it before the second Deathly Roar, and at this point it's just a single target encounter where the boss doesn't really do much. As long as you're dodging these Gale Slashes and you're not getting hit by any of the spears, you're good to go.
They're not dodging them though. I feel bad for Edelweiss because, you know, on this boss there's not that much AoE happening, especially in 45. So in theory you can just, you know, go cat form, do as much damage as possible. But if your damage dealers get hit by those Gale Slashes and have the debuff on them, this nasty dot that he actually needs to be out healed, then you gotta switch out of cat form, throw some HOTS, just because, you know, damage dealer brain, they're not able to dodge it. But Edelweiss, of course, still doing a lot of damage, even though she does have to heal those rogues getting hit by the Gale Slashes. And King Dazar is about to go down here, is in the very last phase. The only other mechanic added here, of course, are those spears that need to be dodged, but not a problem at all for No Girls Allowed. And once they finish this boss, they're going to be 2-0ing Pain for Femme. It's not as close as I thought it would be. Pain for Femme definitely struggling against No Girls Allowed here.
Definitely not a great performance from Pain for Femme from what we saw from them earlier in the tournament. I mean, hopefully we'll see them back in future weeks, because where they showed brilliance, they were a really good team.
We saw JB proc it in Shrine of the Storm on the Tendril pack and just pretty much annihilate it when we had that. But that is a past match, and we are current here in Dr. Waycrest manor right now between Method EU and Abrakedabra for the upper finals. So all guns ablazing here for the two teams right now. Dipping quite low right off the bat, and of course we do have the Void Touched Emissary quite meanly put in the middle of the stairwell there, but no problem for these teams. This isn't, of course, a time trial dungeon, so they are very well practiced here, Zyro.
And it's important to mention, we haven't seen that much Waycrest Manor this cup just yet. For those of you just tuning in, the top left door is always open on Waycrest Manor in the tournament realm, so they always go that way so they can actually create a route around that. And like we normally see from these teams, they go right into Sisters to the Heartbane trio and pop their Bloodlust instantly. On the side of Method EU, Abracadabra is opting to save theirs.
Yeah, opting to save theirs. Also important to mention about this dungeon, it's I think one of the rare Void dungeons. Actually, no, Tol Dagor is Void as well, but it is a Void-based dungeon. So we have heavy influence of Void Emissaries. We already saw one right on the stairs there, and of course we're on a Tyrannical. And you know, the Sister Triad here is actually probably one of the most dangerous bosses, and that's why the surprise comes in that there was no Bloodlust dedicated to this. But I guess they're confident getting carried with healing with all these dangerous aura by that Mistweaver Monk. It's going to be scary to see, of course, when these Jagged titles come out right now and chunk one of the players down, but we do have Life Cocoon available, and actually just went off perfectly, so that's exactly the play that they were going to make. Ashine there gets the Life Cocoon right before Jagged titles hits in order to already get above that 90% threshold and not incur too much bleed damage.
Yeah, I actually love seeing this Mistweaver come out from them. This is like completely something that this team would do. It's a max DPS comp. You get both the massive 10% AP buff instead of the scroll from the warrior tank, as well as the 5% physical damage taken debuff from the healer, but then you get all of the utility from the 3 outlaw rogues that we see most teams running, usually without one of those other two things. but of course with the caveat they don't have a battle res. So really they just need to play perfectly, which is already what you want to be doing in these runs anyways. But if they're able to play perfectly, they'll just be that much faster than the other team.
I mean, I like the approach from Abrakedabra here, right? They're playing hardcore mode, there's no battle reses, and they're just playing perfectly, Forehead, right? There's no issue, just never die and kill things before they kill you. But there is truthfully a lot of danger coming up from them as Sister Briar does go down in just a moment here. Method EU following suit just right on their trail, and both teams sitting at 4% trash apiece. So, Abrakedabra actually finishing that one off first.
Yeah, I was going to say, they finished it first without Bloodlust, then I realized Method EU did pull a couple trash mobs on top of the boss to cleave it down at the end, so that makes a little bit of sense. The cleave on the bosses, I mean, it's a recurring thing. We're going to keep talking about it because we see teams keep trying to do it to innovate their strategies a little bit, and it's kind of up in the air as to whether or not it's the better thing to do, because a lot of the times we've seen it, the teams kind of have to focus on multiple things at the same time. They might not be necessarily so efficient with the DPS, but another interesting strategy coming out of Abrakedabra, it looks like they snapped all the trash mobs from the vent from the next room on top of this table here. We haven't seen that much snapping in Waycrest Manor before.
Yeah, I don't know. That's tabletop rules right there. So it works just like we see in Tol Dagor, just like we see the Braziers in Shrine. I guess it works here at the table, so interesting strat coming out of them. Works quite well. Method EU with a pretty substantial pull here. They actually pull the entire hallway around the corner to make sure that they line of sight the Void Emissary that is sitting right in the middle of that foyer there. So don't want too much damage coming up on the group, but you have to move for these warding candles. It provides a 50% damage reduction for all the trash that stand in it. You can see the rogue standing in it right now, so if the mobs are glowing bright blue like that, they are taking 50% less damage. Got to move around. Now doing a good job doing that. They're finally able to finish off the rest of these rune carvers and weavers.
Now, of course, the question going through my head, and probably yours as well here, is what is Abrakedabra planning to do with this lust? They've been sitting on it for a while, and that's kind of one of the interesting changes that we've seen from last season to this season in Waycrest Manor. Before, Waycrest Manor was a 3 Bloodlust dungeon almost all the time. I mean, we remember very specifically Method EU had a strat crafted in Waycrest Manor where they would go to the Hunter room and use their 3rd Bloodlust in that room the first week last time around. They were too fast and didn't have Bloodlust off cooldown because they were just going way too fast. But earlier today, we saw, 18, 19-minute Waycrest Manors, which means it's now a 2 Bloodlust dungeon, so you have a lot of wiggle room as to when you can use that first Bloodlust in this dungeon, and so far they've waited over 4 minutes to use it.
Yeah, I mean, too fast, too fierce. They have to use it if they truly maintain their 18, 19-minute timer. They have to use it within the next 4 minutes. I wouldn't be shocked to see a big pull on top of Soul Goliath here with Matron as well, and just kind of try to cleave everything down together. But they do have to make use of it very soon. Either that or a very extreme pull on top of the 3rd boss. But right now, it looks like they pull to the side. Indeed, the Goliath gets pulled on top of everything, and the rest of the group just sits to the side. Oh, interesting. So they actually pulled the trash to the side of the room, aggroed the boss, which just ran past, and then are dealing with the boss in the middle of the room while the trash reset. Really clever play here from Abrakedabra. I loved these and they actually committed the Bloodlust to it as well.
Yeah, I think we saw them do the same thing yesterday in their upper bracket. No, it was a lower bracket match we saw Waycrest Manor. I think it was Pain for Fim maybe who did it, or maybe one of the NA teams. No, it was absolutely, yeah, okay, I remember now. It was definitely No Girls Allowed to do this exact same strategy where they pulled all those mobs to the side, and this is definitely something that's new in this dungeon. We didn't see this even in LAN. So that's a new strategy coming out of these teams this cup, and it's a pretty nice strategy, I gotta say, especially because we're on that bolstering affix. You don't want to pull Matron Brindle with the dogs here because all 3 of those dogs will bolster up Matron Brindle.
No, absolutely not. But I guess they're gonna. Looks like they might just pull one mob in slowly to cleave it down at the end. So I guess all the trash with boss and cleaving and killing the boss before the trash is completely off the table for them. Especially, I guess, with the amount of cleave that these rogues do with their blade flurry. So they might do that perhaps when the boss is a bit lower. But Bloodlust on just one boss plus an emissary. I don't know. Big question mark on that one. I think the pool is lovely here, but we'll see exactly if that pays off. I'm sure they've timed this so that their second Bloodlust is going to be very useful towards the end of the dungeon.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that they just completely forgot to use it. I remember we were talking about something similar yesterday with Pain for Fim, where we said, oh, they haven't used Bloodlust yet. And Shelly messaged me on Discord later, oh yeah, we just forgot to hit that. So
unlucky.
They totally could have just forgotten to hit it on the boss, which would be kind of weird. This is a tyrannical boss, and it's got a lot of HP, so I can totally see like the viability of that being a thing. But at the same time, like you mentioned, it's not really the most efficient usage of Bloodlust in this dungeon.
I mean, so is Triad. Triad was also a very dangerous tyrannical high health boss, right? But I mean, whatever works out for them. Either way, they've certainly popped it early enough to get second use of Bloodlust somewhere else in the dungeon that It will likely be more difficult downstairs. But so it looks like they're not risking anything with the bolstering on top of Soulbound Goliath here. We've seen really aggressive pulls come out of teams, even with bolstering in a previous season. And I thought they were going to do something like that here, but they decided to. And as I say that, here comes the rest of the trash on top of Goliath. So they pulled it just a bit later, but nonetheless, 6 mobs right on top of Goliath as they try to cleave it down. But they do want to make sure the boss dies first here.
Yeah, they did pull all the trash except for the matron pack. They don't want to deal with those dogs or matron at all because those dogs have a lot less health than everything else. And bolstering, that's just, you don't want to do that. That's not the play. But like you mentioned, boss goes down first, and then they'll proceed to cleave everything else down. And that was, it was pretty calculated. They cleaved everything down. All the trash was at below 20% when the boss died. So, big math, Gigabrain coming out of Dr. J there.
Big math, Gigabrain indeed, as they get ready to go to the Maggot Hall right before Rawl the Butcher, the 3rd boss of the dungeon for them. That was another option, and I thought they might use a Bloodlust, but then again, just because of the high tyrannical health mobs, it's kind of very scary to combine some of the trash with that boss. You'd have to leave it alive for a very long time, and you can't really do that for rogues. So there's no point using it there, so we're just going to see them get rid of everything as much as they can within the hallway, and then likely within Rawl's room before aggroing the boss. They might draw similar to what they did there with the Goliath. They might clear most of the room for Rawl, not clear all the hallway, and then pull some trash into Rawl's room when Rawl is lower so he doesn't get bolstered. We'll have to see what they do exactly as they chew through the rest of this Void Emissary's health. Method, you have now down Soulbound Goliath as well and are dealing with the rest of the trash in a similar fashion. Not as clean, though, but in a similar fashion to Abrakedabra.
Yeah, and something I want to mention here that we kind of glossed over a little bit. I don't know if either of us mentioned it yet. You might have mentioned it during the boss, but we saw Zmok actually run off in the hallway and paralyze the Pallid Gorgers so that they weren't patrolling inside the entire hallway, so that they could pull those with this trash pack on this edge of the hallway. Just little optimizations in their strategy. They would have had to wait for the patrol or pull with another pack, but they had it set up to where they wanted to pull it with this pack there, so they were just thinking about a minute in advance there. Small things like that are what make these dungeon runs so impressive for most of these teams.
So impressive indeed, as Dr. J channels his Arcana Trinket right there. Huge 30-second buff of a massive primary stat gain as they do a pretty meaty pull here with double Emissary, if I'm not mistaken. There's there's 2 Tides Emissaries in there. Not anything that you want to kick too badly here. There is an Infest if it goes off, not the end of the world, although you do lose a bit of time, but certainly worth the amount of damage they just pumped out as they're doing well over 300k damage here. 2 of the rogues, Method EU moving into the hallway as well, downing what they can. 53% trash here for Abrakedabra.
And not to discredit the healers too, they're both pumping out over 60k themselves on both of these AoE trash packs. So, healer DPS is actually such a big part of what these teams are doing this time around. All of these damage proc trinkets, the Leviathan's Lure from Blackwater Behemoth, and I believe the Aquapotence that they're also using from Lady Ashfane, do so much AoE damage whenever they proc or whenever you use them. It just adds a lot of extra utility to the healers that we didn't have in previous cups.
CCs are out here for Abrakedabra in Rawl's room right now, making just CC, it looks like the higher health mobs right now. Another nice little snap there onto the tabletop from Abrakedabra to speed the mobs over, mimicking essentially an AoE grip from a Blood DK that way, just buying them a lot of time and increased time to DPS these mobs as they cleave them all down and get ready to move into the room after, deal with Rawl and whatever remaining trash there might be. Now there's an Enchanted Emissary in there that just punted nicely to the side in the hallway. Another advantage of snapping those mobs on, because emissaries do not get snapped like the rest of the mobs here. Method E, a pretty substantial pull of their own. No snapping technique from them coming in. I'm not even sure if they know about it necessarily, but nonetheless, similar pull coming from them around the corner as they keep that Enchanted Emissary out of the way.
We haven't seen any snaps from any other team. This is new tech. Everyone's going to copy that after this, obviously. If they're going to try to integrate it into their own strategies, even maybe the teams we're going to see right after this one, because the match right after this also has Waycrest as match 3, so if they're practicing, they might see that and be like, oh, we want to do that too. That's easy to do. All you got to do is hop on top of the table with tricks on the tank. But they pulled the rest of the trash into this room with all of the Devouring Maggots, as well as the Witch here, as well, the Runeweaver. So they're just dealing with the rest of the trash that they need to deal in this top portion of the dungeon, and then they just have to go to the basement after they finish off this boss.
Yeah, Rawl is takes a long time. He's an immobile, high health boss. He's a big boy, and here they go, starting up for Abrakedabra on the left side of the screen there. 81% trash on the board already. They don't have too much more to go in the dungeon. They'll be skipping a fair portion of the basement's worth of trash once they get there. Method EU, just slower. What can I say right now? They have 1 death on the board. That's already not helping their situation. That's an extra 5 seconds they need to overcome. They seem to have done pretty similar pulls after Soulbound Goliath to Abrakedabra, but everything just slower by virtue of things things like snapping on the tabletop that Method EU didn't do, just some cleaner pulls, finishing off the mobs in a much nicer, more efficient fashion on top of Soulbound Goliath that Method EU had to cleave for a bit after. Everything's just looking really nice here for Abra right now.
It is kind of funny because you can see that all culminate in a massive 17% boss HP difference from the two teams here. It is tyrannical, so that's maybe only, a few million HP, but these tiny differences in strategies, I mean, the snapping alone has probably made most of the difference for these two teams, not necessarily the Bloodlust usage. Both teams are going to get one more use of Bloodlust in the rest of the dungeon, so even though Method EU has theirs up now, that's not really an advantage for them unless they planned on getting a third one on later, which wouldn't be good because both of these teams had sub 20-minute runs in their time trials. You're not going to get 3 Bloodlusts in this dungeon. So, I mean, these are just small little changes that they're making in strategies that's putting Abracadabra ahead right now.
Yeah, and it's working great for them. They're even 1% ahead on Trash Zyra. That's huge. That's not actually that big. I'm just kidding. We're all here. 40% for Abracadabra. This is a very long-winded fight. Now, I'm going to be curious downstairs, if I'm not mistaken, since we are in a void-heavy dungeon, there's a couple of nasty voids on the way down, especially the one hiding in the corner of Lord and Lady Waycrest room right near that pillar. That one is a bit of, we can dodge this, we can ignore it, but if somebody slips up by accident, runs too far, walks too far, it has a pretty substantial aggro radius, so we're going to see if they choose a risky strat to ignore it, or just get it out safely, but of course spend more time doing it. The about 15-16% boss difference is maintained here between the two teams. We do know Method EU has a particularly good prowess on single target damage, especially towards the ends of bosses. We'll see if they can make any of that up, but it looks like Abracadabra just shutting that down and just continuing through with mass damage.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we were talking about with Mistweaver Monk is, they have Way of the Clear, and they do so much single target damage, but Zayle's kind of putting him to shame right now. He's doing 5k more single target DPS.
Shame.
I mean,
I don't have a bell, but
if damage, if damage is what Mistweaver's supposed to do, and they're losing to Rest by that much, I don't know.
Sneaky little snap again here by Abracadabra on the side of the table that is on its side. So little snap technique there by them. Once again, it looks, what is that? That's a survivalist pack. So they actually went into the lodge area where the fireplace is, grabbed those mobs and snapped them onto Divine Field, who is sitting on this side tabletop for snapping technique. So I mean, this is like you said, Zyra, new tech. This is really good. Teams are definitely going to be picking this up. I mean, it just saves so much time for them. You can already see them well on their 8. Not only have they finished the boss well before Method EU, but the trash afterwards. They're already headed down to the basement, getting ready with their mass stealth. There's a void somewhere in here. Indeed, they just ran past it, and there's going to be another void downstairs. Expect that the Shadow Meld should be coming out in just a second, so all eyes on those cooldowns. There they go. They drop all threat as they head down into the basement.
And I'm curious what they're going to be doing here in Darkheart Manor right after this. They have the rest of this trash to do, and I'm not sure if they have to deal with any of the terrors that come after Lord and Lady Waycrest. This should be just enough percentage on its own after they finish the Void Emissary to finish them off from the dungeon. Then they can just go boss to boss afterwards.
Boss to boss to boss, indeed. There's only 2 actually. So boss to boss. Yeah, there's Gloom Horrors. They can be a bit sneaky to get by. Sometimes somebody can clip them. It is a very tight space there. Gingy, unfortunately, got clipped on the way down and died. So of course, another death on top of that for Method EU. They didn't waste the battle res, but wasted some time resing, and we now have a rogue vulnerable for 6 minutes without that cheat death. And we do know rogues, as brilliant and used as they are, tend to be a bit squishy, so thank God they have that cheat death, but we see them drop and plop quite a lot.
2 soul fetishes have gone off here on both of these last 2 mobs. Fortunately, they're able to deal with them without any deaths going off. But
ooh, the stun in the
even blue like that's pretty scary. Divine gets smacked for 80% of his health from 1 melee. I don't want to let those soul fetish casts get through.
And they stunned in the candle, so
yeah, not the best, but they only have 94% trash count. They're going to have to deal with a couple more mobs at the end of the dungeon here, so they don't just get to go boss to boss like I mentioned. They end up using their second Bloodlust on Lord and Lady Waycrest, and that inefficiency and trash allowed Method EU to catch up a little bit. They're on the same boss now. They didn't commit their Bloodlust to this boss, so they are going to finish it off a little bit quicker, but Method EU still has their Bloodlust.
Yeah, interesting. Method EU certainly did that a fair bit more efficiently downstairs, but, Abra... Well, it's a bit, obviously Method EU is going to use their Bloodlust on Goraxpool, the final boss of the dungeon, so they're going to kind of balance that out a bit later, but 10 seconds, with how close these two teams are right now, 10 seconds is going to be a big deal for Method EU by the end of the dungeon. Abracadabra now on the final rotation of Lord Waycrest before Lady Waycrest joins him, and they cleave both bosses down together, so as long as the tank can stay alive with the increasing damage output from Lord Waycrest, they will be able to just efficiently cleave them down. Zyra, you and I always talk about this, the efficiency of cleaving 2 targets at once, but then as a result, the increased danger of dealing with dual mechanics throughout the rest of the fight.
Yeah, and I mean, like we mentioned, that's a little bit dangerous. There's a lot of tank damage here, especially on Tyrannical coming out from Lord Waycrest. He's empowered every single time he regens back to full health, so he's doing 15% increased damage, which doesn't seem like a lot, but he already does a pretty significant amount of tank damage even without the buffs. So cleaving them down is definitely the safe, like the strong play in terms of time efficiency, but it looks like they're actually just kind of burning Lady Waycrest a little bit. It is pretty efficient cleave, actually, what they're doing. So if Lord gets down to like 10-20% when Lady dies, that's pretty good for them.
No, it's unbelievably good between the two teams right now. We're about to finish off Abrakedabra. What's wrong? Sorry, you look upset. Lord and Lady Waycrest about to go down. I mean, for every percent of Lady Waycrest, it's equal to 10% of Lord Waycrest damage. So it's actually almost perfect cleave coming out of Abrakedabra here right now. Method EU, again, just a bit slower, but that's obviously the case when they did not commit their bloodlust to it. So Abrakedabra downs the boss, immediately does not shroud, grabs all of the trash. They do need this trash for percentage, so it looks like they're just cleaving it down. No tricks here with preventing the jumps from snapping or anything. They're just looking to power through this, using that Ring of Peace from Zmok. Excellent job by him, and just getting to Gorak Tool.
I wonder if they miscounted or if they're only going to kill exactly what they need and vanish it off, but nope, they
killed an extra
it all. They killed an extra one, got their 100%, and they dealt with that pack very cleanly. That was no problems whatsoever. They didn't worry about the jumps at all.
Some adrenaline rushes were used there, I think, too, so they committed some cooldowns to that and are just looking to finish off Gorak Tool. Method EU just still a fair bit behind. Exact same pull from Method EU, who calculated their percent just a bit better, so they're not going to have that 1 or 2 extra superfluous adds on top of it. But, I mean, they have Bloodlust going for them. I just don't think it's enough for 10 seconds, Zyro.
We'll have to see. 20% boss HP, which is where they're going to be when Method U is actually able to pull this boss. Bloodlust for 20%, that's tough. We do always talk about Method U's single target prowess. They've got some of the best just general WoW players in the game on their team. I mean, they keep getting world first, so they're doing something right. But I don't think it's enough to come back from 20% down.
There is absolutely no way on that one right now because of the 2 deaths on Method EU, but we'll have to see just how much boss percent they can shave off if they even beat Abrakedabra to the boss dying. But right now, Abrakedabra showing why they were top on time trials and just absolutely perfect run so far from them.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of curious to see how close they actually get to their time trial time. That's what I like to do to compare these teams. I mean, once again, their time trial time was 18:53. Looks like they're going to be a little bit slower than that based off their DPS right now. But, time trial times are the culmination of 5 days of practice and then going in and making sure you set the perfect run. So unless you don't have a perfect run in any of those 5 attempts, I mean, I'd hope you did with all the practice.
Did you say 1853? Because
1853.
They're not going to be far off. You're right. I think they're just going to be shy of that, but certainly not by a lot. Method EU, even with the Bloodlust, is not able to close this gap here. It's still a 20% both difference. So they're probably going to get a second round of CDs. Now he's going to get access to Avatar. Well, actually has access quite frequently, but they're able to close the gap a bit now, about 15-16% between the boss. But, I mean, that's going to be all she wrote here in a moment for Method EU on the first game.
I mean, they're catching up a little bit. Genji got a 5 buff, and Mira's Touch of Death came up, but it's not, like you mentioned, not going to be enough. Abrakedabra having an absolutely amazing run. Not quite time trial good, but 20 seconds off in a run is pretty.
Oh my God, Jay is on the rogue. So
the bell's toll for the rogue.
So starting out here again in the dungeon, we're going to see. In season 2, actually, Zyra, we saw teams not pull so much trash. Maybe just one pack along with the Sand Queen here, but it looks like pretty aggressive this season as the meta's been developed so far. Abrakedabra sticking to more traditional, just the crabs on top of Sand Queen. Method you pulling, I believe, two and a bit kind of straggler packs there on top of the Sand Queen.
Yeah, they both. We do see both teams pulling also one of the crocodiles in with the pack 2 as well. And we mentioned yesterday that's a little dangerous. Every time that hits the tank, they lose a little bit of their max HP. I think 5%, I believe, per stack. So something to look out for, but it should just get cleaved down with everything. Something we didn't mention at all, we're missing a green class. We have the Mistweaver Monk back to a Resto Druid, unfortunately.
My eyes are just so trained to seeing that comp right now that I didn't even notice it. But you're absolutely right. Zmok is back on that Resto Druid away from the Mistweaver. Perhaps just because it doesn't bring as much advantage in their opinion in this dungeon, or they want the safety net of now having the battle res yet again. But certainly Abrakedabra are in the prime position to try and take this series right now as they already have a 1-0 lead. So Method EU is going to need to perform real well here. And frankly, if there's any team that can do it, it is them. So we'll have to see as we reach the upper areas of the jail here. Method EU now 5% trash, 35% on the Sand Queen. Abrakedabra also 35% of the Sand Queen, already dealt with 7% of the trash.
Yeah, we see Dr. J also popping off with the 5 buff prowess there. You can see how much more damage he's doing than the other rogues. That's just really player skill at that point. You kind of just will the 5 buffs into existence. You call them out. Sometimes you can just say, people told me that's how it works, and you get a 5 buff every single time. I'm not sure if it works. It doesn't work for me anyways.
I mean, the forehead is strong with Dr. J. He just summons the 5 buff and gets it whenever he wants and deals 50% more damage than the other rogues that did not get the 5 buff. So Sand Queen here at 10% right now is to deal with the final drones coming out. Method EU looks like they'll probably kill Sand Queen just a moment before Abrakedabra here. Both teams, of course, have committed their bloodlust. A lot of damage coming in here from the bursting on Method EU, but no problem for Zalia as they heal that up. They grab some of the drones on the way into the sewers and completely ignore that Void Emissary as they run through, and will, of course, be using their Shadow Meld here in the hallway soon. Abrakedabra doing the same thing in just a moment.
Yeah, now showing that warrior movement there with the charges, the leaps, the I think Swiftfoot potion as well as the new one. I'm still used to these.
Swiftfoot potion is, of course, a warrior-only thing.
Oh, okay. All right. Not a warrior-only thing, but you see tanks using them more than almost every other class. True. They're pretty much a tank thing. Yeah, but like you mentioned, the Shadow Meld off all that trash that you just ran by. And like we saw, you know, a new thing that we see this cup because of the way the cannons have been changed, teams will be pulling most of the trash on this floor, which means they can also pretty easily get to all the buffs here, too.
No, it's funny as you say that, Method. You actually just walked right past that floor and are back upstairs. But no, you are absolutely right. Abrakedabra did stay down here. That is what we've been seeing develop from the teams lately, pulling a lot of trash on this floor. But I believe Abra's already up on Jess Hallis's floor, if I'm not mistaken. I did see them stealth past the C speakers just earlier on the stairs. So we'll see once we get a different angle of observation, because frankly, all these floors look the exact same to me.
No, for sure, Method EU is on Jess Hallis's floor. You can see the
Void.
Arsonist in the corner there, and the Void Emissary. I think there's
yeah, there is one in the corner. Yes, the Arsonist that give it away. You're right.
Yeah, so Abrakedabra is still on the floor below Jess Hallis's room. You can see because they have the buffs around them as well as the Arcane Emissary in the corner there. That is kind of a giveaway to where the floors are in here. Yeah, I mean, Abrakedabra opting to get more trash. This is like the more common strategy we've seen on the Tol Dagors this weekend. But Method EU opting to skip the trash. And they're already on Jess Hallis. Maybe they are opting, you know, to use that global elite aiming prowess of Jimmy when they get to the cannons here.
Full rounds of heal over time effects rolling on the group there as one of the explosives went off screen on Method EU there, plus the bursting stacking up. So Mirror's actually got quite low. Fortunately, no fatalities here for Method EU, but they are able to clean it up and keep pounding through the trash. Abrakedabra already at 21% trash and is heading upstairs soon.
Yeah, I mean, they've already gotten through the difficult part. I believe they also pulled Jess through the wall as well, so they didn't have to deal with any of the trash on that side until just now when it gets pulled by proxy if the boss were running past them. So they do have to deal with this AoE. There's going to be a lot of explosives going out. They need to make sure they get all those. On top of that, there's a lot of kicks going off here that they have to manage. Not only do they have to manage all the kicks on Jess and Bobby Howlis, they also have to deal with trash kicks. They don't want any of those watery domes to go off either, so they have to be really careful here.
No, watery domes are the absolute worst. Let me tell you about that, Zyra. 24% for Abra right now. They're still working to kill most of the trash on the floor, as Method EU did do the kind of cheeky pull through the grate, as you said right now. 37% on just Hallis. They'll be well through this floor and a boss well before Abrakedabra, who just has a small trash advantage as a, you know, by virtue of killing all the trash on the floor, or most of the trash on the floor below, but a fair bit behind on the boss as a result.
Yeah, I misspoke. It looked like there weren't any of the C speakers in that trash bag, which is pretty interesting as well. So they didn't have to worry about any interrupts. They just had, they perfectly pulled that to where they didn't have to deal with any interrupts. So boss is at 10%. Trash is all dead. They're good to go. All they do is finish the boss off. And they're past one of the major choke points we see for most teams, which is this particular boss with explosive. We've seen so many wipes in this corner of the dungeon.
This boss is so weird because it was really non-factor for the first part of the expansion. Everybody just kind of blew through it, and you know, with some buffs and some trash reconstruction, it ended up being quite a nightmare with explosive, and especially Sanguini Panini. But fortunately, we don't have that affix in this dungeon as Method EU. Rockets upstairs right over to the cannon area. Now, keep in mind, again, just if you didn't know, if you're just joining us in 8.2, they did nerf the cannons here. You can only get 5 shots per cannon, 100 energy, 20 energy per shot. So you can't just kind of YOLO all of the trash on the floor on top of it and get 80%. You could, but you would have to group everything up perfectly, make every single shot count.
This is really weird. This is so different from what we've seen this entire weekend. Teams almost have 60% trash percentage before they get to this first cannon, and they're at 23%. This is similar to what we saw, you know, pre-cannon nerf. They're doing the same strategy pre-cannon nerf, so I'm incredibly intrigued to see what they do with the cannon.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to use it, and they're going to shoot out of it, Zyra, at some point in this map, but we'll have to see exactly. Well, happy birthday, by the way. It's a lovely casting with you today. Method EU here, grabbing. I mean, you're absolutely right. Everything is kind of slow and steady right now. They're just pulling one pack at a time. Emissaries coming in as well. There's a Ring of Peace area denial from Mirrors just to make sure that they can cleave down that emissary. There are a few dangerous casts, Riot Shield being one of them that you have to interrupt, otherwise everybody gets decreased damage. And of course the Flame Casters casting Blaze on the tank and Fuse Lighter AoE denial on the ground. So they want to make sure they separate those, have done that excellently, cleave down the Emissary of Tides, and I mean, still no cannon.
Still no cannon. I mean, this is kind of similar. We see people not opting to use the cannon on any of the trash that's on the bridge, and they wait until they pull things out of the top floor, which makes a little bit of sense, right? Because you can kind of trap it all behind the doorway with your ring of pieces and your knockback from the druid as well, which makes them more stacked. It makes more sense. You can also line a side around the corner so everything's stacked up on top of the tank. That makes a little bit more sense to do, so we're probably going to see that out of them. But, I mean, we're looking at just complete differences in strategy right now. Abrakedabra already at 40% trash, but I believe Method EU is going to have that 40% or possibly even more once they finish AoEing this down. So Method EU's strategy just clearly superior right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a fair bit ahead. I think what they're going to do is, as you said, they're going to try to bottleneck as much as they can through that doorway from the floor that they just skipped after just Howless. We can already see them rearing up in that direction. We're likely going to see a tank-only speed potion come out of right now as he's going to rear up, grab most of the floor here, and they're going to funnel it back out to the cannons, I expect. We see Mass Stealth coming in early just so he can pre-position himself and get a good pull on everything. And it looks like the rogues are helping out as well. So they've run away off screen with Tricks of the Trade up to help funnel everything onto Now, who is now funneling everything back outside into the hallway. Now keep in mind, there is one cannon, of course, with 5 shots in the corner, but there's going to be nothing preventing them from getting to the other corner and using the other cannon's 5 shots. So they could commit 10 cannon shots to this if needed.
That was a little scary there. You saw you got the chain on him there, which is a silence plus a move speed reduction. And on top of that, over on the side of Abrakedabra, he's Mock dropping incredibly low, but fortunately he's able to shadow meld off whatever trash you got. Divine also goes down. I mean, that's just... I mean, fortunately, they're not in combat with anything, but if he did commit his shadow meld there, it looks like he didn't use it, so they should be totally fine. But if he did, they'd be in trouble. Fortunately, the healer will be able to go beyond. They'll be able to get a res off right here, so this is going to be a little time waste, maybe 20-25 seconds.
And he Divine fell over right there. Method EU still 65% on the board right now, so they, while we were kind of all eyes there on a bit of hiccup from Abrakedabra, Method EU managed to deal a pretty significant amount of trash percentage into their score right now. Now you can see all types of crowd control coming up to make sure that they bottleneck everything well at the kind of end of the hallway there and use the second cannon, as I alluded to earlier. So we saw, I believe, Mass Roots come out of Zalia. I'm not sure if he's running. I'll double check that in a second. But we also saw the denial from the Ring of Peace from Mirrors. Anything they can to make sure that the mobs are nicely grouped up so that they can cleave everything down. 72% trash for them, 45 still for Abra. I mean, they're just starting to run away with this one, Zyra.
Yeah, and I mean, that's all the cannon prowess coming into play there. They pulled a massive pack, everything at the same time, and just opted to use both cannons. You're absolutely right. They did use Mass Entangle. We just went ahead and checked with the tool there that you can use on your own streams there at home as well if you click on that arrow in the top left corner. They did opt to use Mass Root. They have all forms of Mass you see here just to make sure everything's stacked up for those cannon shots. So yeah, just better dungeon mechanics coming out from Method EU. I'm not sure how many shots they have left for this pack, but you don't want to shoot into that Arcane Emissary either.
Yeah, you got to be careful of that Enchanted Emissary. That's a 200% reflect for everything caught in that bubble, and these ads are so annoying with their constant cast, so they didn't even engage the trash until it disappeared 20 seconds after engaging it. Of course, it does have that 100 energy that it loses over the course of 20 seconds, and then ports away to the Eternal Palace for killing later, of course, for players who are raiding. Method EU here now dealing with the final pack before Knight Captain Valeri, third boss of the dungeon. Both teams will have their Bloodlust available in about 15 seconds or so, but I don't expect they'll be using it until Korgus at the end of the dungeon. Abrakedabra doing their own mass similar pull, bottlenecking it through the doorway from the previous floor, and just trying to catch up to Method EU right now.
Yeah, but they're going to have to, I mean, somehow execute this bridge a full 2 minutes faster than Method EU to catch up at this point.
The Bloodlust.
Method EU opting to just pull the rest of this trash that's at about 20% into the boss with their Bloodlust, and they're just going to cleave it down when it comes in the room. It'll come right through that door even though it's closed. They have phasing abilities, I suppose. This is definitely a better strategy compared to what we saw from Fourty K, where they pulled max HP mobs into the room with the boss and cleaved them down, rather than just using their Blade Flurries to finish off the already damaged mobs from the cannon.
Certainly a safer build there, as Zalia unfortunately procs his Undulating Tides yet again. Gets a small absorb, but won't have access to that damage for 45 seconds now. Team is healthy and healed up after that 5 pulse of bursting, with the remaining trash that Zyro just mentioned come in. Abrakedabra now still having woes with their trash. They're dealing with the corner pack with the same Enchanted Emissary that we saw earlier, opting to kind of crowd control it to the side as they try to get started on the trash earlier, but they're a fair bit behind right now. Both teams have 1 death on the board, but still have 2 battle reses, and Method EU, I mean, it's just destroying this boss right now. 30% left on Valeri, and they'll be heading over to the final boss and final trash that they need before Korgus.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not quite sure if that's enough. I mean, we saw a team before they were at 91% trash count when they finished off this boss before in the previous match, and they were able to finish off the rest of the trash to get to 100%. I'm not quite sure if there's enough to finish off the 12% here, but they've dealt with this boss as well. We can't really talk about Valeri too much. It's
dead.
probably too easy. It's also dead as well. There's not really much to go over here. We're
It's
just gonna have to
fortified.
see. We're gonna have to see if there's enough trash percentage here.
Unfortunately, a bit of an Oofington bear there for Abrakedabra right now. Divine Field once again died for the second death of the actual series for Abrakedabra here, both on this map right now. So they res them up after. Unfortunately, the trash was all killed, so they managed to hang on to one more battle res for the remainder of the fight as Method EU has finished off Knight Captain Valerian and headed over to try and combine all this trash together. Now, trick that we've seen on this is that to constantly avoid the Void Touch Emissary, kill the trash and then run away, but it looks like Method EU is committing to killing it, and I think that's where the percentage makeup's going to happen, Zyro, that you mentioned, since you saw teams come in here with 91%. So we should get that from the Void Touch Emissary to start porting away. So let's see exactly how much it gives. I'm curious. It should be about 90 or 91%. There it is. Yep, so 90%. That's exactly what they need. They'll finish off the rest with this cannon and head over to Korgaz. Abrakedabra still, chiseling through here, 45% right now on Valeri.
Yeah, this will give them exactly 12%. Just checked on MDT here. It'll give them exactly the 12% they need, so they'll be totally fine. How dare I question their math prowess? I believe
it's EU math, Zyro.
You're right. It was Method and A who had 91%, and they just skipped the Void Touch Emissary, like you mentioned. So that was the rest of the percentage they needed made up there. But they don't have Bloodlust for Korgaz here, which still is a difficult boss if they get a lot of doubles. I don't want to cast a curse, but this is still a difficult boss for them to pull off.
There is no way they are going to lose this map at this point, bar a complete wipe on Korgaz. It doesn't even matter if Abrakedabra has Bloodlust. They are so far behind Method EU at this point on this map on a fortified version of Korgaz. Now, yeah, you're right. We could have some bad luck coming up here, but Abrakedabra now 87% trash. Zyro smiling because it's his birthday, so he's a really happy boy right now, but smiling here that, maybe Abra won't have the percentage they need. He thinks you need the 12%. Now, it could be 12 point something, and it's around to get down to 87. We'll have to see exactly what Abra does, but whatever they do, they're going to need a miracle here because Method EU is already on 55% on Korgaz and completed that trash.
Yeah, we'll have to see. When I checked it on MDT, it was 12% on the dot. Didn't round up at all. So if we see them at 99%, that's a little bit of an oof for me. But Method EU, 40%. Not much left to go on this boss. They actually, I don't think they're getting a double right now, which is kind of scary. But outside of that, it's fortified. It's not that much damage to them. Zalia, he's not doing the 23K or 25K.
He still has Trank available as well.
It's only doing 20K. He's not beating the tank. Poor guy. Probably not getting any Leviathan's procs. What can you do?
Unlucky on his part right now. But Leviathan and Catherine. But Overseer Korgaz now 24% HP left for Method EU, who are likely going to tie up the series in just a moment here. And Method oh no, you're right. Abrakedabra 99% trash. That is just unlucky. Certainly not a miscalculation. Nothing they can control about that. Just 99% trash. So they'll have to go back anyways to finish up the rest of it. Method EU here, 7% on Korgaz, and it looks like they will indeed be tying up the series here in just a moment.
There's the moment, Sloop.
Really nasty in a tyrannical environment. We got fortified. Bursting only has a couple of scary spots. We have, of course, those minions of Zool in the first room, and then the Ooey Gooey Rich and Chewies in Machimba's room. Not too much danger. We've seen teams, just kind of range it. And Skittish, who cares? You got 3 rogues on each team. So Skittish not a problem, especially with warrior tanks. Even after the damage nerf shouldn't be a problem because tank threat was buffed per node in your neck now with the new SN system. So no problem there. We already see an aggressive pull with the Colossi for Abrakedabra straight into the room. What do you think about this, Zyro?
That was okay. The Colossi pull is weird by itself, but what Jay did, well, Jay's dead now.
That is weird. Jay died. Wait, no, that's not weird. Jay's dead.
He already committed his cloak. I'm not sure. I think he was trying to clear out the minions with his cloak early on, but he was stealth, so he didn't actually pull the minions, and then he ran back after turning on the Void Emissary. That was all very weird. I'd love to see a replay of what happened there, but like that. It seemed like it was just a mistake. That was very weird from them. But outside of the mistake and the death, similar pulls from them, pulling 2 packs, popping their Bloodlust. This might only actually be 1 pack from Abrakedabra, which seems very safe.
But they popped Bloodlust.
They also popped the Bloodlust too. That's really weird.
Something's going on with them right now, but a lot of instability here for Method EU. We do have, of course, the healer highlighted for Method EU, Zalia, and that allows us to see the different buffs, up to 3 of them running on the different members of the team. So you can see Tranquility hot on them, and various just heals from Zalia to see how much HPS he is pumping off on that pull. I think he reached well over 100k there, so just making sure the team's nice and healthy with the bursting and just immense amounts of damage from that fairly aggressive pull where they did commit their bloodlust. So already Method EU ahead in this dungeon, 12% on the trash, 0 deaths for starters. I mean, Jay kind of had that silly death at the beginning, so 7% on trash. Zyra, I don't know. This is, I think we're back to the whole Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing with Abra right now. I'm not really sure what to make of this beginning of the dungeon for them.
Yeah, I mean, just everything in this first room has been way more efficient for Method EU. Not only did they deal with the minions right away instead of waiting until after the first trash pack was dead, but Method EU has also been chain pulling their trash. Even though both teams only pulled 2 packs with their Bloodlust, the second mobs started to kind of, die and get low HP, they said, okay, next trash pack, let's keep chain pulling. And you can see the difference. Method EU is on their last trash pack right now, while Abrakedabra still has 2 of them left to deal with.
2 of them left to deal with, indeed. Method EU now waiting for the Golden Serpent to spawn. Golden Serpent that did have its debuff, the damage over time debuff, of course, that it puts on players, but Disaster here, let's put that on hold. Abrakedabra, I don't know what's up here, but almost a full team wipe coming out of them. It is going to be a full team wipe. They have no way to get away outside of, okay, so we did have the Vanish from Ashine, just making sure he gets a bit of time saved for the group, but this is an absolute disaster here for Abra. Method EU, their dungeon to take, I mean, it's very early on, anything can happen, it's a very tough dungeon, but I mean, with a team like Method EU, you're going to have to hope for a miracle to try and catch up to them at this point, Zyra.
Yeah, I mean, Method EU are a team that, when they know they have an advantage, these are confident players, and we keep talking about, the level of players they are. Clearly, they're all some of the best in the world of their class, but they're also very, I feel like they're very streaky players, and if they know they're playing well, and if they know they have an advantage, it doesn't really faze them at all. They don't get nervous about messing up. These guys are just rock-solid players, and you can't really bet on them to make mistakes going forward. Abrakedabra's going to have to pull out some interesting stuff to even have a chance to come back on this dungeon, and we saw 2 more deaths coming out from them right now. Swag and Divine going down.
This is Oofington Bear the second here. I mean, this is rough for Abra, and the problem is with a fairly linear dungeon like King's Res Zyra, there's not a lot of room for creativity. There's room for creativity in the Berserker Bridge, of course, and some of the typical skips that you do, and I'm not really sure what's going on here. They aggroed some more trash before the rest of them were res. Divine feels still dead. Zmok goes down again. Jay goes down again. Swag never even got resed. Ashine, I guess, had another Vanish up his sleeve, so he managed to avoid that, or he committed his Shadow Meld to that, but it's an absolute mess right now for Abrakedabra. Method EU, I mean, they're just coasting through. Golden Serpent now in single digits of % already.
And I mean, I feel like you really have to talk about Abrakedabra as a team at this point. Like, we always coined them as this sort of all-star team of players, because they do have players from Shell's Angels who won last year's MDI Global Finals, and on top of that, they also have players that come from Method PogChamp who got 3rd in that final. So when we look at this team, it's like, they have all the pieces to form a really good team, but they've never been able to get past that 3rd place point. I mean, we almost call it just the curse of 3rd place that Dr. J has, because he got 3rd last year, he keeps getting 3rd this year. What can you do? You have to play better than this. We keep seeing this from them.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They have all the pieces in place, but Method's already fallen to pieces once, that they're not going to do it a second time. So they're going to make sure to just top off this tournament and just represent the strong team, the dominant team that they were in the final season. They're trying to get over that hiccup that they had against Method in hard to call it a hiccup. They did get swept, but that was a really tough loss for them. And Method EU's back on the prowl now for that top spot. Abrakedabra is looking great in that first map, but I don't know. I don't know what to say about them. This is even beyond the bad times that they have. I mean, this is just some of the worst I've seen them at. This is just not their dungeon right now. It's not working out for them. So I think they're probably just spending a second to regroup here. But every second they spend, Method EU just gets further ahead.
No, I completely agree with you on Method EU. Like, they got 2nd place one time and they instantly hit their limit. They don't want to do that a single time afterwards. And they're doing this same Guardian pull that we saw before. I mean, the Guardian pull with this trash room, with this gauntlet, it's still more difficult than pulling it with the boss. I think I like the boss pull maybe a little bit more.
I disagree.
We saw tank deaths both times, so maybe they just weren't quite practiced, or maybe it's just incredibly difficult to do.
But the Guardians themselves are just substantially less dangerous outside of the damage output on the tank, because you can now control and direct where they cast the suppression slam. That was one of the biggest dangers of pulling them with this gauntlet in the first place, is that you're in a small enclosed room and everybody could cast on anybody and you'd have to kind of run away and it could be really bad. But as long as the tank is just keeping them faced in the same direction as much as possible, then you have nothing to worry about. Who cares where you combine them at that point?
And I guess to make the devil's advocate argument is, now we've seen both of those strategies twice. We've seen the gauntlet pull, we've seen the boss pull both times, and the gauntlet pull went clean both times, and the boss pull, they had a tank death both times. So, just based off of results, pulling it with the gauntlet seems like the safer thing to do. So, makes sense in hindsight. But, there's not really much to talk about in terms of like team versus team here. Method is coasting through the dungeon, and Abrakedabra is still struggling to get through that first trash room. They haven't even finished the trash off yet.
No, they haven't even finished the trash. The boss hasn't even spawned nothing. Method use on, I think, second last. The second last of the 4 pieces of the gauntlet here after the first boss, the Golden Serpent. So, it's like I mentioned earlier, Zara, you only have so many directions you can be creative in this dungeon, right? We've seen some creativity with pulls in Machimba's room, combining some of the constructs with the boss. How do you separate the GUIs in there, etc. We've seen some different packs, especially now that the emissaries for Bejeweling is out. We've seen, different packs get skipped on the Berserker Bridge. So it's just, I don't know, we're going to see some awesome creative stuff from Method EU, probably from Abrakedabra once they get to those bridges as well, but there's no way you're making up an 8 death difference, and I don't even know how many seconds they lost just with the runbacks.
They're probably gonna kill this boss if they one-shot it here, and that's a big if right now, going off of how they're playing. Okay, it's a fortified boss, maybe that's a little
big if or a big oof.
That's a little over the top. I'm sorry, that's a little toxic. I'm not trying to be toxic. They're gonna be 5 minutes behind in this dungeon, not to mention the 40-second death timer, so you're gonna have to see multiple full team wipes coming out of Method EU, which is a team that I think in all of the cups, we only saw them in double-digit deaths maybe one time, and that was a very unfortunate motherload. I think we saw 3 bomb deaths back-to-back from Xaylia, which was, that must have been a tilting dungeon for them, but I think they still won that tournament. They never lost a tournament, so you can't really fault them for having one bad dungeon, so I'm not really sure what to say. Method EU isn't a team that tilts really that hard, so asking them to wipe is not going to happen. This is a completely different strategy in this room, though. The strategy that we've seen from other teams here is that they'll AoE all of the fluids down at once, and anyone who can't immune the debuff just outranges it, and the rogues finish it off with Cloak. They're opting to do 2 smaller pulls instead.
And heal through it, probably, because we'll see. They're about to die off here, and I don't see now moving just yet, and Xaylia is still in there, so it looks like they are just going to straight heal through it. The stun did come out of now. They're about to die here in a second, but they're backing up towards the other embalming fluids. Yeah, so they're just trusting that Xaylia can power heal through this. We're probably going to get a nice view of the different HOTS coming up on the group right now, but huge amounts of healing HPS coming out of Xaylia just to stabilize the group, and no problem. Worst thing that happened there was Xaylia probably just undulating tides. It happens. It happens for all the healers constantly, and they've moved on to the second half of the room now. Excellent view of the mountainside as well.
A beautiful view. Those mountains are pretty breathtaking. But we did see all of their personals used, except for the Dampen Harm on the Monk. They did commit Touch of Karma as well as both cloaks from the rogues, so they don't have any personals for when these emissaries, when these fluids die. I'm not really sure. They have Trank, so yeah, Xaylia has their back. They should be fine. All they got to do is use that and maybe healing potions, which, by the way, I don't think we've mentioned Abyssal healing potions a single time this tournament. New healing pot that does almost half your HP when you use it. It's a massive amount.
It's about 135k, something like that.
And increased by versatility, so it's a lot of healing. So it's a pretty ridiculous amount.
No problem for them here, and they do manage to squeeze by. Oh, everybody gets just a bit low there. Mirrors, unfortunately, does fall over, but nothing to the caliber of a full team wipe. Fragments does proc his cheat death on top of it. A lot of HOTS coming up, of course, from Xaylia already. Everybody's properly blanketed for that 6-stack of bursting. Managed to pull it off. A bit sloppy, I'm sure. In their practice runs, they probably did that. They knew exactly what they were pulling and lived through it, but perhaps it was a bit of a coin flip scenario, and this time it just didn't work out in their fully clean favor. Abrakedabra is now in the gauntlet area, has pulled the same constructs in the room, and is just trying to desperately climb back into action on this map. His Method EU is already working on Machimba, who's at 80%.
Yeah, I'd love to see a comparison, like side by side, maybe later on, some sort of analyst cut possibly, about which of those strategies is faster, because it would seem to me that dealing with all of the bursting stacks at the same time with Rogue Cloak seems like it's a safer strategy. It might not be as cleave efficient, but being able to deal with every mob that has the same amount of HP relatively seems like the safer play to me, or like the smarter play in terms of effective cleave. It's just an interesting side fact. I'd love to see which strategy ends up being the better strategy in just terms of time efficiency. But in terms of dungeon strategy, I'm really interested to see how Method EU plans on dealing with the rest of the dungeon. I really liked the strategy that we saw from No Girls Allowed, where they opted to pretty much skip as much of the gauntlet trash pack up here on the bridge as possible. They only dealt with one berserker, I believe, which are the really dangerous mob that we see teams wipe to all the time in this dungeon. So Method EU usually are the kings of innovation. I'm interested to see what they have to do in this dungeon.
They have been the kings of innovation, but I mean, to be fair, a lot of teams have innovated so far. I mean, we just saw the tabletop snaps on Waycrest Manor for Abra when they dominated that dungeon previously. But Fragnance just dipping a bit low on HP here, of course, does not have access to that cheat death that procced on the trash prior with the high amount of bursting stack that they decided to just kind of power through. And as we've seen, especially in this fortified environment, they're holding on to that bloodlust and not committing it too much in, but they're likely going to do a more aggressive pull or a larger pull somewhere on the Berserker Bridge, which will be coming up in just a moment as Machemba is now about to fall here for Method EU. Abrakedabra still waiting. I mean, they're still on the gauntlet right now. After that, they have to deal with the GUI room and Machemba, something that Method EU is well past.
And like we mentioned before, they're a full 5 minutes behind right now. That first boss pull, they're actually 6 minutes behind counting the deaths. Here we are in the first trash room. They have their bloodlust available. They're doing the very large pull that we saw, I believe, from one of the teams last time around. Same thing, bloodlust popped, Berserker, and the next pack afterwards also pulled. Emissary of the Tides is getting rooted just out of range. Now that aura that it has that stops interrupts and CC is actually very small. It's not very large at all, so you can be quite close to it and still be able to CC/interrupt the mobs like you see here. They're pretty much right next to it, but they're totally fine with all of their interrupts. They are also line of sighting a little bit too. Maybe they're just a little bit too close. Not quite sure.
They're line of sighting there because now is actually in quite a dangerous situation. He had 2 stacks of the Berserker debuff on him, the bleed, and he already committed his shield wall to it. So once those 8 seconds wore off, he had cast coming in. He had the bleeds wear off as well, but he was at 20% health, so he actually did that as a defensive measure to make sure to interrupt those spectral bolts for coming in. But now we have a healing totem in the middle of the area. Azalea is undulating, has proc, now is back to 2 stacks, doesn't have the shield wall available, and we have just ticks of bursting all over the group, but they should be able to stabilize here, as now it does pop another defensive through it and has Avatar available as well for that increased rage gen, so he can spam a bit of Ignore Pain just to help Azalea heal through everything. And even through that mess, Zyro, Azalea still has Trank available.
Yeah, that's actually something interesting I just noticed. Genji got the bleed debuff, but he didn't swap to his dwarf for this dungeon, which is kind of weird. We usually see rogues play dwarf in this dungeon so that they can remove those bleeds. And you can see his name. It's Genji Nelf. He's on his Night Elf. I wonder why he's Night Elf for this. Might have just forgotten to swap characters, or because I believe you can swap as many characters as you want now, not just one. So that's maybe just an oversight from them, or maybe they're using it for... I can't think of what you'd use Shadow Meld for in this dungeon as a rogue. You can just vanish things off.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of him doing something solo in order for the team to skip. Maybe somewhere on the bridge he's going to do something like that and use a Shadow Meld, but nonetheless, I mean, Fragnance is indeed a dwarf. We can see that cooldown on his stone form is still about only halfway through. Another bunch of bursting in on Method EU, no problem for them, as they kind of prepare for the rest of the bridge here. I'm going to be curious to see what they skip. They wait for the bursting to fall off. Abrakedabra, they kind of know they're in trouble here. The fairly aggressive pull coming in from them, but actually it's not that aggressive. It looks like it's only half the room, similar to what Method EU did with all those GUIs on top of only one construct. Method EU indeed does skip the entire bridge in order to get ready for the third boss here. Zalia has procced his staff as well, so we see that debuff there. Not going to have that available for the rest of the dungeon either.
Yeah, he must have procced it on that trash pack just now, which makes sense because it's a double Berserker pack. It's probably the most dangerous pack they were on, so he does proc that. Oh, that Ashara staff. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name. I think it's a new Ashara, something like that.
I got it.
He does proc that Prodigy's Potency. It stacks up. Every single stack does about 2k damage and healing to everyone within an AoE radius. It's a big revival, pretty much. A huge arcane explosion.
It's a good revival.
It's a great... Okay, it's revival if it was actually good. Which is what we're saying. He did proc it on that pack just for the extra AoE damage, which is, that's what you want to see. Being able to auto-proc your stuff is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it worked out great for him, and it is indeed a new Ashara. So you were correct. It's just Ashara's name with a new at the beginning. So difficult one there, but we got it, Zyro. We got it, Birthday Boy. Kula now down to 25% HP. I don't think they have. Actually, we have Stone Form available on Fragnance and on. Actually, he's the only dwarf. It looks like. Yes, he is. Okay, so, I mean, Fragnance is the only get-out-of-jail-free card if another Sever Axe goes up. Of course, they don't have access to Blessing Protection, no Paladin available for them, but they can indeed Shadow Meld off the debuff between the mini-boss spawns here for the third Council boss of the dungeon. Abrakedabra, always keeping an eye on them, still working through the trash and getting ready to soon pull Machemba. They haven't even started the second boss, whilst Method EU is halfway through the third boss. Right.
And I wonder if we're going to see something similar from them with the Explosive Totem. I remember last dungeon we saw the Explosive Totem going off, and we were, like, holding our breath, waiting for how much damage it did to the group, and then we're like, oh, it's fortified. It doesn't do that much damage. They can just pop personals or cloak through it, so it's not that big of a deal. I don't think that's a strategy we'll see from most teams, and we do see both Zaylia and one of the rogues hopping off to finish off that explosive totem first, so maybe that was just a weird new strategy from one team, like, oh, we forgot to swap to it, just pop the personals and live. That was kind of weird, honestly.
I mean, everyone in this group has, if I'm not mistaken, the totem kills itself when it pulses, right? Like, it doesn't keep pulsing. So if that's the case, everybody in this group has enough defensives, and I believe, and I'll check right now, but I believe now is running Safeguard as well, question mark? Under, monster, maybe he's not. But nonetheless, I mean, everybody has enough tools to survive as needed on this one. So, I mean, yeah, but why risk it, right? Unless you're doing it on purpose so that the healer can try and proc the staff.
We're talking about fragments a lot. Global Elite player, also king of 5 buff rolls. Look at the damage he's pumping out right now. Almost 40k single target on that Outlaw Rogue. That's a lot of DPS, a lot of 5 buffs, maybe multiple 5 buff rolls. That's kind of, I mean, we saw, I think we heard about the legend of Shakib RR, the famed 5 buff roller from MDI land, but Fragments doesn't have the same rogue from MDI that he was rolling his 5 buffs on, so I'm not sure how he's managing to get all these.
I mean, it's a new and improved version, of course.
I mean, new and improved. Okay, I'm not sure. I mean, clearly he's doing a lot of damage on this boss, so he must be doing something right.
Aka Ali here at 15% HP left for Method EU versus 20% on Machimba for Abrakedabra, who's about to finish off the second boss right now. Since their just absolutely horrendous start to the dungeon, they have managed to clean everything up and have a fairly flawless and quite efficient run through the dungeon, but it's just way too late at that point. Method EU has finished off and dealt with the third boss. They do have 12% trash that they need to make up somewhere before dealing with the Shadow of Zul, and it looks like they're going to do it right here with the 2 packs before the bridge.
And opting to kill off the Hex Priest as quickly as possible before the Emissary of the Tides, because they really want to make sure that none of those Hex casts go through on the Hex Priest. They would be unable to interrupt them with the Tides Emissary in the pack anyways, so just a little bit of a heads-up play. You know, it's just kind of a smart play from them. On top of that, I don't think they have quite enough. They need to pull a couple extra mobs here to get that extra 12% that they need, and they do have a Beastmaster in this pack. We gotta watch out. We've seen some guys fly off the platform here from that Beastmaster, so hopefully it doesn't happen to him there.
Well, I mean, for my entertainment, hopefully it does, but certainly don't want that for team efficiency and the team winning right now. A bit of damage coming in here from the bursting stacks and the remaining hits from the mobs on Method EU. Nothing that Zaylia can handle, of course. Just look at that HPS right now. He was maintaining about 90 to 100 before during the initial pull of that pack, but they're able to just chew through the rest of this. They should get to 96% trash, or at least very close to it, 93. Yeah, it'll be 96. They know what they're doing here, and they'll be heading over to the Shadow of Zul. Now, Shadow of Zul does give 4%, and will complete their 100, and then they'll be off to the last boss, as Abrakedabra is just now finishing their first heavy pull on the bridge.
Yep, and I mean, it's Method EU all the way, and I think at this point what we really have to do is compare their times and just the way they played this dungeon to other teams. I really would have liked to see the strategy that we saw from No Girls Allowed, because I feel like their strategy was like the safest route, and actually pretty impressive routing in general in this dungeon. You only, like I mentioned, you only have to deal with one Berserker with that strategy, which is definitely the safest way to do the dungeon. The Berserkers are almost always where you see deaths come out on tanks or any residual DPS that get them, which is one of the reasons, like I mentioned earlier, why you play Dwarf in this dungeon, because if you're playing Dwarf, you can eat one of those bleeds and then just stone farm it off. That's pretty important. They're on Shadow Azul right now. We always mention how difficult Shadow Azul is for tanks to deal with, especially Prot Warriors. They don't have any very good mitigation against that shadow damage, so you see Zaylia pumping heals into the tank here, but no tank death here? Ooh, talk too early. Tank death. Caster curse.
Sorry.
I did it. I didn't need it. I'm sorry. No, I take it back. Now you're good. That's my fault. Take it off the board. It's my fault. Give me the 5 seconds.
Yeah, but I mean, indeed, Prot Warrior has a lot of strength. Sustained magic damage intake is not one of them. I mean, you're not speccing into IP traits. IP only does so much, and you only have 15% DR on a 20-second uptime from that spell reflect. So now does go down. They do commit their battle rest to it. Another charge of which they will get momentarily. Of course, 96% trash on the board. There is just an error in display currently. The Shadow of Zul does give 4%. So technically speaking, Method EU is indeed at 100%. They are done with their trash. No worries about that. King Dazar here, 90% HP as Abrakedabra is they're killing things on the bridge.
Yeah, they're still doing the dungeon. They're still dealing damage and also healing the rest of the group at the same time while trying to get through the rest of the dungeon, going from point A to point B. So, I mean, credit to them where credit is due. It looks like the dungeon's been pretty clean at this point. This is, I mean, I believe at this point when you're a team like this, you know you're not done in the tournament, right? You pretty much have lost the series unless something catastrophic happens to Method EU. And they've kind of treated this as a practice run. I'm not sure. I mean, this is practice for next cups. We're not going to see King's Rest again today at this point. But you know, they still are playing out the dungeon, which is important to do because you never know if the other team's going to mess up. You have to play like you still have a chance at all points.
And I mean, just, you know, out of respect for the competition and everything, they're doing what they can, but certainly at this point, their mind is probably set to getting in the lower bracket, getting back out of the lower bracket, and trying to face back against Method EU. But they'll have Method NA, well, maybe they'll have Method NA at some point in the competition. That lower bracket is a scary one, but for now, you know, they're just going to chill out. The team's going to go get a kebab, have a nice meal, take it easy, have a drink of water, and come back, as Method EU right now is at 33% on Dazar.
And of course, Abrakedabra will get a little of a break. We have to play the lower bracket match to determine who's going to play them for the rights to go to the grand final later on. Between, I believe, No Girls Allowed and who's our other element? Is it Pain for Fem? Or yeah, I believe it's Pain for Fem. So we should. Oh, sorry, it's Method NA. My brain's all over the place right now. We do see, however, close. Method EU. I wanted to talk about Method EU here. This is a blazing fast time. I believe the fastest time we saw earlier today was a 23-minute time. And they're not even going to get the third Bloodlust off here.
That's interesting because they're going to clock in at 22 minutes, which is indeed a smaller number than 23. So this is definitely a fast